In the apocalypse, strength is the only language that makes people willing to follow you. And today, the Hao is no longer just an ordinary train. It has transformed into a steel dragon, carrying ambition and wild dreams. And Chun Meng's path of no return. He wants the name Hao to one day echo throughout the world. He wants everyone to have heard of that name. This is both a dream and the ultimate goal he's always strived for. The residents behind him finally snapped back to reality, their excited cheers echoing endlessly. Everyone stared with thrilling excitement at the completely transformed train in front of them, looking exactly like a steel dragon. In this apocalypse, who wouldn't want to follow someone strong enough? Especially the kids standing behind Teacher Chiao, who were now on their tiptoes, trying to catch a glimpse of Chun Meng sitting in his chair before the crowd. But because they were short and their view was blocked, none of them could see clearly, scratching their cheeks in sheer anxiety. Even though they had seen Chun Meng quite a few times on screen, this was the first time they wanted to see him in person. Board the train. Chun Meng stood up, holding Xiao Lu, and strode toward the control room. He wanted to experience for himself just how different the train would be after its massive expansion. The residents behind him quickly lined up in an orderly fashion, returning to their residential cars following the orders transmitted through their iris chips. Stepping into the control room, the most intuitive feeling was just one word: big. It was significantly larger than before. The single bed placed in the corner looked adorably small, almost like a doghouse. The once cramped control room now only had the control panel in the center, 2 refrigerators on either side, and a portal mounted on the wall. The hundreds of heavy machine guns that were previously densely packed on the ceiling were now spread out, leaving a certain amount of space between them. It looked much neater and more pleasing, but it also made the whole space feel a bit empty. I need to find something to fill up this control room. Chun Meng frowned as he assessed his surroundings. In the past, although the control room was cramped, it gave him a sense of absolute security. Every time he sat in it, he felt at ease. But now, it was just too empty. He casually placed Xiao Lu on the floor, thinking to himself that when Xiao Lu woke up, its active space would certainly be much more spacious. But there was another troublesome issue. The control room was now more than 10 meters above the ground. Before, a simple retractable staircase was enough, but now it had completely turned into a climbing ladder. He wasn't afraid of heights, but having to climb a ladder over 10 meters high every time he went up or down was indeed quite inconvenient. Yeah, the train still needs further modifications. A plan quickly formed in Chun Meng's mind. He had to build an elevator to make getting on and off more convenient. At the same time, he would install a few large retractable slides and escalators for the residential cars to help the residents move around quickly. Although there were still a few drawbacks, overall, the pros outweighed the cons, so it wasn't too bad. It's just that the train needed to continue upgrading. With every upgrade, the train unlocked a new function. When the train reached level 10, the 2 functions unlocked were train expansion and mechanical fortress. The effect of the mechanical fortress was that with a push of a button on the control panel, the entire train would root itself into the ground from end to end for 24 hours. During that time, all defense accessories would automatically increase by 1 level, and all firepower accessories would have their consumption cut in half. The price to pay was that for those 24 hours, the train couldn't move. It could only remain fixed in place. If this effect was activated, the train's armor would instantly hit level 14. It was just a pity that he hadn't had the chance to use it yet. That day, his full arsenal didn't even have time to be used, and even if it was, it wouldn't have changed a thing, because level 13 firepower was enough to crush everything. After this expansion, the iron ore reserves on the train were nearly depleted, pitifully empty. With only 155,000 units of iron ore left, it was basically a return to the poverty era. Chun Meng remembered very clearly that he had gathered quite a bit of iron ore recently, yet somehow it had all evaporated completely. In the control room, he slightly frowned, knowing that he could no longer follow the conventional path. Last night, he had searched the entire wasteland but didn't find a single level for iron or mine. Even if he kept searching tonight, the results probably wouldn't be any better. Once a level 4 iron ore mine was discovered by another train, it would almost certainly be mined immediately. There was no such thing as leaving it for the destined ones who came later. Discovering a newly formed level for iron or mine was just too difficult. Although the pickaxe production line was only a green-tier accessory and could only be upgraded to level 3 max, this was the blue zone, and the trains operating here were all considered high-level. Getting a few Murphy stones wasn't entirely impossible, but he definitely had to take an unconventional path. Tonight, he would enter the mechanical city ruins in the red zone through the train tunnel. Only by taking a different path would he have a chance. Once all the residents had climbed the ladders back to the residential cars, the Hongxing house slowly started up. Chen Meng wasn't in a hurry to activate the drill. Instead, he slowly pushed the joystick. Sitting in the cockpit, looking down at the ground ahead from high up, he felt the train's speed gradually increasing along with the powerful thrust from behind, making his whole body buzz with excitement. The feeling of piloting the Hongxing Hao now was completely different from before. With the high vantage point and the massive control room, the entire train looked exactly like a steel dragon. He felt as if he were personally piloting a giant steel dragon, tearing across the wasteland. Chen Meng slowly pushed the joystick to the max, heading straight for the zombie horde 30,000 meters away on the radar. A distance of 30,000 meters was covered in the blink of an eye. Sitting in the control room, looking at the zombie horde whose highest level was 9, Chen Meng didn't slow down at all, directly steering the Hongxing Hao to ram right into them. Rumble. Countless zombies were sent flying into the air before being smashed to pieces. The Hongxing Hao utterly crushed the zombie hordes, the very symbol of the apocalypse, without any reason or logic. Just a few months ago, he had almost died at the hands of the zombie hordes countless times. A few months later, those very zombie hordes were nearly wiped out by him. So damn satisfying. He continuously rammed through them 4 or 5 times, until the zombie horde was practically ground into dust. The wind and fire wheels were now taller than an average person. The 10-meter-tall train cars were no joke, and the clearance from the bottom of the cars to the ground was nearly 2 meters. There was absolutely no chance of what used to happen before, where zombies jammed the wheels and made the train unable to budge. Now, it just plowed right over the zombies' heads. Calling the current Hongxing Hao an absolute juggernaut was no exaggeration at all. A moment later, Chen Meng still felt a bit unsatisfied, but he didn't waste any more time, extending the drill. At the same time, the drill spun at high speed, and the spider legs extended, lifting the massive train into the air while lowering its front. The drill plunged straight into the ground and began boring down. The drill was incredibly massive, as wide as the entire train car, perhaps even slightly larger. After the train expanded, he noticed that many of its accessories had also scaled up with it, including the spider legs. They were already big to begin with, but after the expansion, they became even more colossal. Looking out the window, those giant spider legs gave off a heavy sci-fi and mechanical vibe. Just a glance was enough to exude intense pressure and a profound sense of threat. Honestly, if he had a train like this right when the apocalypse first hit, his train would look more like the apocalypse than the zombie hordes themselves. The source of the apocalypse would probably be him. With the rapidly spinning drill, the train quickly tunneled deep underground, heading straight for the hole he had bored into the train tunnel last time. The old hole was clearly too small to be of use, but that was fine. He just needed to drill a bigger one. Perhaps because of the train's current massive size, he noticed that its energy consumption while moving had increased significantly. Furthermore, the movement speed both underground and on the surface had slowed down a bit, dropping by about a third. This was no small decrease. It was very clear that this was a crossroad, forcing him to choose between speed and size. He chose size. As for speed, if it got slower, so be it. It didn't matter. As long as he gathered enough iron ore to upgrade all the wind and fire wheels and speed-boosting accessories once more, the speed would instantly skyrocket. A drop in stats wasn't a big deal to him. As long as the accessories could still be upgraded to add value, it wasn't a real downgrade. What he feared most was a nerf to the mechanics. That would be a true disaster. It was worth mentioning that the blade accessories were now completely useless against normal zombies, because the clearance from the ground was nearly 3 meters. Monsters that weren't tall enough would only feel a cool breeze over their heads, completely unaffected. Soon enough, the train reached the entrance to the train tunnel, and he once again saw the hole he had personally drilled. Without any hesitation, the colossal drill thrust into the tunnel, spinning rapidly. The Hongxing house smoothly entered the train tunnel once again, simultaneously switching to the rabbit cloud wheels, hovering steadily in midair. Looks like it's about to collapse. In the control room, Chen Meng looked back, only to see a massive amount of dirt and mud pouring down like a waterfall. A lot of dirt had already accumulated on the ground from the previous drilling. Back then, the hole wasn't large, so it was quickly sealed up. But this time was different. The hole was significantly larger and seemingly impossible to fill on its own. The dirt kept pouring down relentlessly, almost like diarrhea. After a few minutes, a small mountain had piled up inside the train tunnel, but the hole above was suddenly blocked and no more dirt fell. It wasn't because the dirt sealed it on its own, but because the Hongxing Hao had dealt with it. The solution was very simple. He crafted 7 or 8 supersized giant band-aids, and had Zhang Yi and Zhang Air pilot their mechas outside to seal the hole with them. The effect wasn't bad at all. These patches were quite sturdy. As expected of something made from iron ore, they were truly durable. Of course, they couldn't withstand the massive amount of dirt pouring down continuously, but as long as they created enough resistance, the dirt would naturally pile up and seal the hole. He didn't know how long it would hold, but for now, it was enough. See that? Uncle Lee pointed out the window, looking at the giant band-aids sealing the hole. He said, "Back when I graduated and worked as a safety officer, I was forced into intensive training sessions because of dam construction projects like this. After the train expanded, every car was fitted with windows, and they were all floor-to-ceiling windows extending from the bottom all the way to the top. The immersive feel was pushed to the absolute max. In reality, the Hongxing Hao had gradually started transforming into something resembling a space train. At the very least, a normal train shouldn't have these kinds of floor-to-ceiling windows. But whatever, there's no need to compare it with normal trains. After all, a normal train shouldn't even have any of the accessories found on the Hongxing Hao. The train has really undergone a massive change." The young man who always followed Uncle Lee looked at the scene before him, muttering in awe. It hasn't even been that long, yet it's transformed from a bare locomotive into this. Uncle Lee, do you remember back when the Hongxing Hao was just a bare locomotive? Even though it felt a bit more alive, it always seemed kind of dangerous. What are you scared of? Uncle Lee smiled and continued. Chen Meng already said it. These glass panes have the same defense level as the armor. It's all black tech. I'm not talking about that. I mean, if the Hongxing Hao really falls into extreme danger. Think about it, Uncle Lee. Which carriage would the Hongxing Hao prioritize abandoning first? That's hard to guess. It definitely wouldn't be breeding carriage number 15, right, Uncle Lee? Uncle Lee suddenly fell silent, his mouth twitching slightly. After a while, he finally spoke. If it really comes to that, you idiot, wouldn't you know to run to the front carriages? After its expansion, the Hongxing Hao had obviously become a colossal train. But inside the nearly 100-meter-tall train tunnel, it still looked like a shrunken toy, not standing out much at all. This time, the Hongxing Hao didn't head straight south, but changed its course to the north. Its main target was the Mechanical City ruins. Even though this place had been ransacked by many other trains multiple times, leaving almost nothing behind, Chen Meng believed that the Mechanical City this tunnel led to would definitely still be pristine, because no one had ever set foot there. One thing worth mentioning was that, up until now, the Hongxing Hao was the train with the largest expansion scale he had ever seen. Although other trains had also expanded, none had reached his scale. Even though he was short on iron ore, at least he didn't have to face the immense pressure of upgrading defensive accessories like other trains. Just thinking about the figure of several 100 million units of iron ore was enough to give anyone a headache. The train galloped through the tunnel, the incandescent lights on both sides still shining brightly. Chen Meng had passed through this tunnel many times and was incredibly familiar with it. About an hour later, the incandescent lights on both sides switched to warning mode, flashing red continuously. That meant he had arrived at the station. Sure enough, not long after, a colossal train elevator appeared on the left side of the tunnel, large enough to hold the entire Hongxing Hao. Moreover, this still wasn't the end of the tunnel. Chen Meng narrowed his eyes. Without overthinking it, he took out a level 2 energy stone and threw it into the funnel protruding from the train elevator. At the same time, the elevator doors slowly opened, and the Hongxinghao drove straight inside. He only hoped that the upcoming journey wouldn't require any more iron ore. It was gone. It was really gone. The train carriage was almost completely empty. If he really needed iron ore, his only option would be to urgently sell off some items on the train's radio broadcast or ask the travel frog to deliver some more. Without hoarding a few million units of iron ore in the carriage, even for a mere scouting mission, he always felt uneasy. The elevator began ascending rapidly. The elevator was incredibly spacious. It could easily accommodate the 400-meter-long train, with room to spare. The target detection radar showed that above ground was the mechanical city ruins located in the red zone, and right now, there were already 3 or 4 other trains scouting the area. The elevator continued to ascend steadily. With a loud thud, the elevator stopped. Its 4 sides slowly retracted into the ground, revealing the train in a flat square located thousands of meters underground beneath the mechanical city. This place looked like a laboratory. The incandescent lights on the walls flickered erratically. The floor was mottled with dried bloodstains, and shattered glass instruments lay not far away. Along with the toppled display screens, everything indicated that this place was absolutely not safe. Just then, a low growl echoed out. Hundreds of zombies suddenly burst out of the rooms surrounding the square, roaring as they charged toward the train. It was just that the train was way too tall. Only a very small number of zombies could cling to the rough spots on the exterior of the carriages and scale the fire barrier to climb up. The vast majority of the zombies could only roar helplessly, bouncing around in place. Level 4 zombies? Chen Meng frowned slightly. It had been a long time since he last encountered such low-level zombies. Just as he was about to press the red button on the control panel to deal with the zombie horde, Xiao's voice suddenly rang out in the cabin. Captain Chun, Uncle Li suggests keeping these zombies for research. He says this is a nearly sealed space. It's unclear how long these zombies have existed here, so it's very likely they have some distinct traits. Then, Xiao AI added, I deemed this information quite urgent, so I didn't activate the warning lights. Chen Meng immediately pulled his hand back, grabbed the walkie-talkie, and said, Biaozi, get off the train. Capture them alive. Copy that. Biaozi's voice quickly came through the walkie-talkie. Even though transmitting messages via the iris chip was faster and more convenient, he still liked using the walkie-talkie to issue orders sometimes. The battle ended very quickly. Under the command of Biaozi and the mech squad, the zombies' limbs were broken in no time. They were tied up like crabs and thrown into the breeding carriage. Afterward, the squad continued carrying out orders, proceeding to scout the surrounding rooms. A zombie was brought to the cabin. Chen Meng stood up and walked over to the zombie with pale white eyeballs and purplish lips, beginning to observe it closely. If not for Uncle Li's reminder, he really wouldn't have noticed. These zombies had clearly existed here for a very long time. There wasn't a trace of fresh blood on their mouths, so they obviously hadn't eaten in ages. How could they survive without eating or drinking? Were they just suffering from starvation? Didn't zombies starve to death? Looking at them, they weren't exactly skin and bones either. Don't move. Right at that moment, Xiao's extremely agitated voice suddenly rang out in the cabin. Are you trying to get me killed? Startled, Chen Meng turned his head to glare at the train's AI assistant on the control panel, unable to stop himself from cursing. Just now, he was genuinely so spooked that he nearly shot the zombie dead to ensure his safety. He always kept a heavy Gatling gun ready in his pocket. Captain Chun, Xiao AI said, trembling with excitement. Biaozi and his team found a warehouse full of materials and were about to flip through them to check. I told them not to touch anything. The materials in this warehouse are all copper fiber template plates. What are they used for? Chen Meng frowned, looking up at the control screen where the footage was being transmitted via the mechanical eyes. The warehouse wasn't large. Its area was roughly equivalent to a residential basement. He had never heard of this material before, nor did he know its use. The receiver of the cosmic receiver is made using this exact material. All right, I understand. Chen Meng calmly pulled out his walkie-talkie and said, leave this batch of goods alone for now. We'll come back after we finish clearing this area. Team 2, Team 3, everybody off the train. Team 2 is in charge of guarding the goods. Team 3 keeps scouting the other areas. After giving the orders, looking at the footage on the screen, he couldn't help but chuckle. With this batch of materials, he could craft a lot more cosmic receivers. Their efficiency was obviously leaps and bounds better than solar panels. Previously, after spending several million units of iron ore to upgrade his solar panel to level 100, he discovered it could yield 180,000 units of iron ore per day. His first reaction had been, expand. Anyone who had done business understood that doing business was actually very simple. First, create a stable, profitable model. For example, if investing $100 could consistently generate a profit, the next step was simply to continuously scale up that model. Business sounded complicated, but its essence was merely scaling the step from 0 to 1 into from 1 to 100. It was just that 70% of people failed at the 0 to 1 step, and those who kept going faced a path full of thorns. Therefore, his first instinct was to stockpile iron ore and then craft 100 solar panels. In the short term, the train's progress would certainly be slowed down. But once the setup was complete, the daily profit would soar to 18 million units of iron ore. Compound interest, profits breeding more profits. It was the very definition of a post-apocalyptic capitalist. Unfortunately, while most accessories in the train carriage could be crafted multiple times, this particular accessory was limited to just one in existence. The plan that had just flashed in his mind was nipped in the bud. Unexpectedly, just when he thought he had hit a dead end, he stumbled upon another opportunity. The plan to clone the solar panel had failed, but the plan to clone the cosmic receiver, something he had never even considered before, had suddenly become a reality. Fantastic. Chun Mang grinned as he looked at the material warehouse, calculating in his mind exactly how many receivers this pile of materials could craft. But very quickly, he frowned, a flash of anger appearing in his eyes. The materials on the outermost layer had been chewed to a pulp. One look was enough to tell it was the work of those damn zombies. It's fine, Captain Chun, Xiao AI spoke up to reassure him. This material doesn't require strict structural integrity. As long as the unchewed parts are intact, they can still be used. The impact isn't significant. That's good then. He paused for a moment, then asked, "Can you hear my thoughts?" "Of course not, but I can deduce them through Captain Chen's expressions. Don't guess next time." Understood. Chen Meng sat in the control room, watching the exploration feed from Biaozi and his team on the screen. This area isn't large. It's definitely an underground lab, but it's unclear what kind of experiments they ran here. Right now, the entire sector has been completely cleared out. There's only one elevator going up. It's the only way in and the only way out. The train can't fit in that elevator. It only holds about 20 people, definitely not meant for trains. All the zombies have been taken care of. The horde that rushed out earlier was pretty much every zombie in the area. The few left hiding in the dark corners were wiped out by Biaozi and his men. Everything is clear. Biaozi ran up below the control room, looking up to shout his report. Immediately after, the control room door slowly opened. Chen Meng looked completely unfazed. Leaning on his cane with one hand and holding Xiao Lu in the other, he stepped on thin air as if it were solid ground, casually walking down from above. Without looking back, he said casually, "Let's go check out that warehouse." Biaozi stood there dumbfounded. It took him almost half a minute to snap out of it before hastily responding and running after him. The Team 1 members behind him rubbed their eyes in disbelief, wondering if they were still dreaming. Was Lord Meng just walking on air? No armor, no equipment. He just walked right on the air. Lord Meng really is a cultivator. In the underground lab, Chun Meng calmly walked across the plaza with his cane, heading straight for the warehouse. Outwardly, he showed no emotion, his eyes indifferent, but inwardly, he couldn't help but chuckle. A rope ladder? He was Captain Chun, Lord Meng, pointing his ass at his subordinates while climbing down a 10-meter rope ladder? That pose would be way too embarrassing. He originally hadn't planned on coming down, but a brilliant idea struck him just in time. Using his mechanical heart, he crafted a few steel blocks and stuffed them into his shoes, then tucked a few more into his belt. Then, by controlling powerful magnets through his cane and coordinating with his body movements, he created the visual effect of walking on air. Flawless. If he hadn't put steel in his belt, he easily would have lost his balance. This level 100 high-power magnet accessory was incredibly useful. Highly recommended. Every Captain Chen should have one. By the time they reached the warehouse door, Biaozi hurried past Lord Mang. Taking the initiative to pull the door open, he presented it. Lord Mang, this is the warehouse. Chen Mang looked into the material storehouse before him and nodded in satisfaction. Waving his hand, he smiled and said, move all of it to the armor research area in Car 2. Be gentle, don't break anything. Understood. After that, he walked over to another warehouse. This warehouse was much larger. It was filled to the brim with iron ore, and all of it was level 3, with each piece equaling 100 units of iron ore. The stockpile of ore was incredibly abundant, piled directly in the warehouse without any containers. Chen Mang stared expressionlessly at the mountain of iron ore before him. Right now, Zhang Yi and Zhang Er were rapidly transporting the ore. Finding a warehouse full of iron ore should have been a good thing, but he couldn't bring himself to be happy, because more than half of it had been eaten. That's right, eaten by those damn zombies. Son of a bitch. Damn it. If you're a zombie, shouldn't you just obediently wait to die? Why are you eating iron ore? Is iron ore something you deserve to eat? Besides, aren't zombies only supposed to eat flesh and blood? Why would they eat iron ore too? If it weren't for those zombies, all the ore in this warehouse would have been his. Soon, the inventory was completed. Captain Chun, this warehouse has a total of 3.4 million units of iron ore. About 12 million units were eaten by the zombies. Yeah, Chen Mang took a deep breath, trying to suppress the rage bubbling inside him. Damn it all. They ate 12 million units of his iron ore. Fucking zombies. After that, he turned and walked quickly back toward the control room. As he approached the control room, he levitated into the air again and gently returned to the pilot's seat. Well, it's not too bad. Acquiring a batch of materials and 3.4 million units of iron ore. With over 3 million iron ores as a foundation, the train could press forward with much more peace of mind. It's just that he could have gotten a lot more, if not for those damn zombies. As for the personal elevator, there was no need to take it. Through the target radar, he knew that elevator led straight to the outskirts of the Mechanical City ruins. There probably wasn't anything left to explore in the Mechanical City anyway. It had already been ransacked by far too many people. Next up was checking out the train tunnel to see what lay ahead. Only by taking an unconventional path can you reap unconventional rewards. When others take the water route, you take the dry route. When they take the dry route, you take the water route. Following the crowd might keep you fed, but being different is how you get rich. Of course, the chances of starving to death aren't exactly low either. While Biaozi and his team transported the massive amount of iron ore and materials to cars 2 and 3, Chen Mang tossed a level 2 energy stone into the funnel next to the train elevator. The train elevator immediately started up and slowly descended, bringing the train back down into the tunnel. Bypassing the Mechanical City, they continued heading straight north. He didn't know what was up ahead, but he knew he had his train and his cannons. No matter what was waiting for him, it would all eventually be his. About half an hour later, the end of the train tunnel finally appeared. However, just beyond the endpoint, the familiar mechanical carvings were gone. Instead, there was a massive natural cavern, pitch black inside without a single ray of light. Chen Mang looked at the control screen. Both the target radar and the resource radar showed zero activity ahead. Yet, for some reason, a sense of unease still welled up inside him. On the display, this area was no longer marked as an origin material zone, but as an unknown zone. The moment the front of the train entered the cavern, a piercing alarm suddenly blared in the control room as red lights flashed frantically. The target radar instantly flared up. There was a monster in the cave. Level 15. Chen Mang's expression shifted slightly. His train's armor was only level 13. At the same time, the resource radar also started flashing wildly. Countless mineral deposits surrounded them. Dozens of veins were densely packed throughout the cavern, including 3 level for iron ore veins alone. The train's headlights instantly flared on, brilliantly illuminating the space inside the cavern. A colossal 2-headed giant monster charged out from the darkness, roaring furiously as it swung the massive spiked club in its hand, smashing it straight into the train. Boom. The planet couldn't dodge in time and took the full brunt of the blow. Red warnings flashed incessantly in the control room. Car 5 was hit so hard it was nearly flattened by half, teetering on the edge of critical failure. Chen Meng immediately shoved the joystick, maneuvering the train to tuck itself into a corner while rapidly scanning the data on the screen. Car 5 armor integrity, 34%. Doomsday mechanical cannon number 5 integrity, 0%. Mechanical nanobots are urgently producing materials and initiating repairs. The monster didn't press the attack. Instead, it stood its ground, its eyes glued to the planet. Its gaze brimmed with bloodthirsty brutality. Its body leaned slightly forward, clearly ready to charge again at any moment. Over 20 meters tall, heavily built, blue-skinned, and boasting 2 heads, it radiated a terrifying pressure. Damn it! Chen Meng sat in the control room, staring at the Doomsday mechanical cannon number 5, with 0% integrity on the screen. He muttered, crafting a level 20 Doomsday mechanical cannon is insanely expensive, you dick-necked beast. 0% integrity meant it couldn't be repaired. It was completely scrapped. His only option was to rebuild it from scratch. Don't be fooled by this monster's massive size. Its explosive burst of speed was frighteningly fast, even faster than the train's current speed. Right at that moment, a roar echoed. The 2-headed monster roared in fury again. Lowering its bulky frame, it raised its massive spiked club high and launched a death charge toward the planet. Faint sonic booms could even be heard rippling through the air. But the planet was already prepared. It instantly switched to spider leg attachment mode, nimbly crawling up the back wall and straight onto the cavern ceiling. The entire train hung upside down from the ceiling, successfully dodging the lethal strike. The planet scurried rapidly across the cavern roof. The remaining 9 Doomsday mechanical cannons moved in unison, locking onto the 2-headed monster as their barrels spun at high speed. Boom, boom, boom. Rounds spewed out with fiery trails, almost instantly forming a storm of metal that blanketed the monster. Upgrading the Doomsday mechanical cannons didn't directly increase their raw power. It boosted their range and fire rate. But fire rate is power. The faster you shoot, the deadlier you are. 9 level 17 Doomsday mechanical cannons, built without sparing any expense, opened fire simultaneously, tearing straight toward the 2-headed monster like a tempest of metal. Chen Meng's pupils suddenly shrank. The spiked club in the monster's hand spun like a windmill, blocking all the artillery shells. After an intense barrage, it only suffered minor injuries. It can actually do that? He didn't have time to overthink it. He immediately unleashed another barrage while controlling the Hang Tin how to crawl upside down along the ceiling. Circling behind the monster, he continued the bombardment, aiming straight for its weak points. But don't let its massive size fool you, it wasn't slow. It quickly spun around, intercepting the entire barrage aimed at its back. Even when he simultaneously targeted its feet, calves, head, and stomach, the result was the same. Every single shot was blocked. The 2-headed monster was only affected by the shock waves, sustaining minor injuries without a single fatal wound. Even so, this cavern was high enough, towering 100 meters tall. As long as he hung upside down on the ceiling, he could completely grind this boss to death. But the very next moment, Chen Meng saw the monster bend its legs sharply. A sense of dread instantly welled up in his heart. The apocalyptic mech cannons roared again. The monster, which was already crouching, didn't stop. Its spiked club kept spinning madly, blocking every shell. Clearly, it was winding up for a leaping attack. The fact that it was bracing itself like that proved it could actually jump all the way to the ceiling. Should I retreat? A dark glint flashed in Chen Meng's eyes. If he wanted to run, he could absolutely use the drill to quickly escape this cavern. But there were simply too many mineral deposits in this place. He really couldn't bear to leave them behind. Right now, what he lacked the most was iron ore. Running away now and waiting until the train was upgraded before coming back just didn't sit well with him. By the time the train reached level 15 or 16, the iron ore here probably wouldn't be as appealing anymore. He always believed that so-called delayed gratification was often just an excuse to comfort yourself for things you couldn't get. The toy you craved as a child. If you only get it at 30, can you still call that delayed gratification? But if they kept fighting, that spiked club spun so fast that he couldn't break through its defense. The moment he stopped firing, the enemy would instantly leap up and attack. His current supply of copper ore simply wasn't enough to sustain firing level, 17 shells for that long. Right then, Chen Mang's expression gradually turned strange. He tried switching to level 14 shells, but still couldn't break the defense. But the monster remained crouching, spinning its spiked club to block the shells. He continued to drop it to level 12, level 9, level 6, and then straight down to level 1. All the shells being fired now were level 1, dealing absolutely no damage. Yet the two-headed monster had no intention of letting up. Its bloodthirsty, brutal eyes stared fixedly at the Hang Tin Hao as its spiked club kept spinning, blocking every single bullet. Clearly, its special mechanic was using the spiked club to block all types of projectiles. Unless the shell level was high enough, say, level 22 or 25, causing even the shockwave to exceed its endurance limit, it was practically invincible. But the key detail was that even level 1 attacks triggered its forced defense mechanism. In that case, there was no need to rush. Chen Mang glanced at the control panel and chuckled. Initially, the train had 4.62 million units of copper ore. The price of a level 14 shell was 3,000 units, level 15 was 3,500, level 16 was 4,000, and level 17 was 4,500. After 3 having discounts, the price was 562.5. He had just fired over 3,000 shots, consuming 1.813 million units of ore, but still couldn't do anything to this monster. Adding the low-level shells used for testing, he currently had 2.71 million units of copper ore left. This was barely enough for over 4,000 level 17 shells at most. It clearly wasn't enough to kill it. Its absolute block mechanic was way too disgusting. However, the price of a level 1 shell was only 5 units of copper ore. After 3 having discounts, it was only 0.625 units. With his remaining 2.71 million units of copper ore, he could craft over 3 million level 1 shells. From here on out, he didn't need to do anything else. He would just use level 1 shells and slowly shoot at it. He refused to believe it. So what if it was a boss? Even a level 15 boss had to get tired, right? Crouching like that and spinning a spiked club all day long, he didn't buy that it wouldn't get exhausted. If he actually fired all 3 million level 1 shells and this boss still showed no signs of fatigue, then he'd concede defeat. Conceding was fine. Next time they met, he'd just go out, develop for a bit, and come back. In a flash, 3 hours passed. If not for the crackling explosions echoing through the cavern, this place would look almost like a still painting. The Hang Tin Hao hung upside down on the cavern ceiling, its 9 apocalyptic mech cannons firing incessantly, unleashing shells like they cost nothing. As for the massive two-headed monster, its legs had finally given out, collapsing to the ground. Only the spiked club in its hands kept spinning, though clearly not as fast as before. Its speed had dropped significantly. Can't take it anymore already? Chen Mang leaned back in his chair, propping his legs on the control panel, his eyes shifting away from the movie playing on the side screen. Puffing on his cigar, he looked down at the two-headed monster struggling below and drawled. "Weren't you the guy with the 100% weapon block? Come on, take your time blocking. Let me see where the limit of this forced defense mechanism of yours really is. We can play the war of attrition. Don't even mention 3 hours. Even 30 hours wouldn't be a problem." He had this mineral deposit in the bag. Even Jesus couldn't stop him. He said so himself. How am I supposed to log this? Lao Zhu sat in his private room in the 7th Defense Carriage, looking at the scene below. He frowned, holding his pen, unable to write anything for a long time. Today, Master Mang piloted the Hang Tin Hao to explore north through the underground train tunnel. We strayed into an uncharted cavern, encountered a sudden attack by a level 15 boss, and carriage number 5 was damaged. Master Mang ultimately annihilated it in the blink of an eye. Lao Zhu was hesitating whether to write the phrase annihilated in the blink of an eye or not. Theoretically, even though 3 hours had passed, if the Hang Tin Hao could enter space in the future, then 3 hours in space would just be a brief moment. So writing it that way wasn't entirely wrong. But after thinking it over, he still changed the wording. Fierce confrontation. Master Mang gained the upper hand. After all, this was a level 15 monster. The train was only level 10. Fighting above its level, taking a little time, was perfectly normal. Moreover, It clearly showcased Master Mang's choices in the face of danger, his unyielding will, and his brilliant decision-making. It's highly suitable as teaching material. Yeah, he'll just write it like that. I almost died. By now, carriage number 5 had been completely repaired by the mechanical nano-spiders. Only Goei Choo-Choo and Yinemo were sitting by the window, still a bit shaken. The moment they were attacked, the carriage was almost instantly crushed flat. Fortunately, after the train was expanded, its size had increased to a height of 10 meters. Even after being smashed, the remaining carriage still retained a height of 3 meters. Thanks to the eternal shock absorber accessory, the two of them only suffered a few superficial scratches. If the train hadn't been expanded, that blow would have turned carriage number 5 into scrap metal, and they would have definitely died on the spot. Furthermore, if carriage number 5 had been instantly destroyed, it would have lost its connecting function. The carriages behind it would have disconnected, and everyone in the back would have become ghosts under that club, dying instantly. Thank goodness. Goei Choo-Choo gently patted her chest, looking down at the two-headed monster outside the window, and muttered, "Living to see another day? It's so good." She was sitting by the window, but her head was facing downwards. Gravity seemed to have been nullified inside the carriage. This was the effect of the internal spatial stabilizer accessory. Her body didn't feel any discomfort, just that the viewing angle was a bit weird. She'd get used to it eventually. Another 4 hours passed. Chen Meng looked at his remaining copper, or only 1.2 million units left. He had consumed over 1.5 million units of copper ore. 4 hours ago, the two-headed monster below had already shown signs of buckling, yet it had managed to hold on until now. This stamina and endurance were truly top tier, but it seemed it had finally reached its limit. The remaining 1.2 million units of copper ore were more than enough. It'll grind you down to death, damn it. However, carriage number 5 having just been attacked reminded him of something. QAI, if the carriage containing the spatial portal is destroyed, what happens to the portal? Will it shatter? QA's voice echoed in the control room. Theoretically, this is the most powerful attack, and almost impossible to defend against. The spatial fragments would instantly slice the portal into countless pieces. Tran Meng nodded, his eyes darkening. He seemed to have figured out when the purple tier spatial stasis accessory, an item he had never used, could actually come in handy. This accessory wasn't useless at all. On the contrary, at a critical moment, it could be the deciding factor. 7 hours had passed since the Hang Tin Hao entered the cavern. Aside from the initial clash, the ensuing 7-hour battle was essentially a loop of static animation. After 7 hours of relentless torture, the look in the two-headed monster's eyes had shifted many times. From its initial brutal bloodlust to exhaustion, fury, shock, and helplessness. And now, it was sheer despair, reluctance, and total collapse. Right then, completely drained, both its physical and mental stamina hit their absolute limits. It could no longer keep a firm grip on its spiked club, which flew out of its hands. The moment the two-headed monster's spiked club was knocked away after continuously swinging it for 7 straight hours. Its eyes, which had just been filled with absolute despair, suddenly snapped back to clarity. Instantly, it tried to force itself up and lunged to grab its weapon back. However, after being worn down for 7 hours, as it tried to stand, its body went limp, staggered, and crashed face-first onto the ground. In its final moments, the monster turned its head to look behind at the countless artillery shells raining down on it, and let out a roar of absolute despair. But its fate was already sealed. The second the spiked club flew away, Tran Meng instantly switched from level 1 shells to level 17, unleashing a continuous barrage of direct fire. Stripped of its weapon's protection, the calf-sized shells rained down like a flurry of feathers, slamming into the monster's body and detonating inside. In an instant, countless bloody blossoms erupted across its flesh, sending gore flying through the air. It was a scene that was both tragic and magnificent. Overwhelmed with despair, the two-headed monster couldn't even survive a single wave of bombardment. Its massive, hill-like body crashed heavily into the dirt. Right before it died, its eyes were still glued to the giant spiked club lying not too far away. The battle was over. The Hang Tin Hao, still suspended near the cavern ceiling, finally descended slowly. The moment it touched down, hundreds of residents, under Buta's command, rushed out holding trained saw blades, ready to butcher and carve up this level 15 boss. This was a familiar routine. The flesh and blood of high-level monsters had to be portioned, packaged, and stored in the freezer for future use. I'm dead tired. In the control room, Tran Meng checked the time on the dashboard and shook his head helplessly. It was already 6 a.m. Dawn was breaking, and he had been busy all night long. The last time he endured such a drawn-out battle was at the Iron Ridge Plains. But it had to be said, this was truly a clash between masters. After killing this level 15 boss, a deep sense of accomplishment left him incredibly satisfied. This was a level 15 boss. The strongest monsters in the blue zone were only level 12. This level 15 boss would be considered an overlord even in the purple zone. Yet, he had taken it down single-handedly. Thankfully, his good friend had sent him a ton of copper ore. Otherwise, with his original supply of copper ore, there was no way he could have defeated this boss today. He would have had to retreat and come back later. Well then, next up is harvest time. By now, a large number of residents had stepped out of the carriages, carrying pickaxes as they marched toward the nearby mining area. Everyone's eyes were sparkling. It had been a long time since they'd seen this much ore. Just thinking about how many hang tin tokens this would exchange for was thrilling. Even though last night's battle had been broadcast live throughout the train, keeping many awake all night, it didn't matter. 2 bottles of cola later, and they were right back to work. Tran Meng also promptly activated the Stamina Fragrance, a purple tier accessory, to help the residents recover their energy quickly. There were dozens of ore veins here. For level 4 iron mines, 1 level 4 copper mine, 1 level 4 titanium crystal mine, 9 level 3 iron mines, and 2 level 3 copper mines, 14 level 2 iron mines, and 11 level 2 copper mines. Bar none, this was the most densely packed resource zone he had ever seen. What more was there to say? Until these mines were completely stripped, he wasn't going anywhere. For the foreseeable future, he would stay right here and go into complete seclusion. The day he emerged from seclusion would be the day the train upgraded to level 12. 3 oxygen generators began running at full capacity, turning the cavern into an oxygen-rich environment so everyone could work with maximum vigor. The train's headlights were turned up to the max, brilliantly illuminating the entire cavern. The initially tragic battlefield transformed almost instantly into a bustling production site, painting a lively and prosperous picture. Even though he was a bit tired, seeing this scene, Tran Meng couldn't help but smile. It was truly worth it. Just the night before last, he had scoured the entire Danger Valley without finding a single level 4 iron mine. Yet here there were 4. Then, he looked down at the 3 items in his hands. This was the highest level boss he had ever killed, and the rewards certainly weren't stingy. First, the red tier accessory blueprint, magnetic suspension. Second, the special item, Hell's Hat. Third, the purple tier mech blueprint, the Pope. The rewards were so generous, it was almost ridiculous. Maybe it was because he challenged a boss way above his level, or maybe this was a hidden boss in an uncharted area. But the loot was so abundant it honestly made him feel like he didn't even deserve it. The first reward, magnetic suspension. This was a type of wheel, similar to the red tier Hellfire wheels accessory that could be crafted once the train reached level 10. Both were red tier wheels. But in terms of speed, the Hellfire wheels were still slightly faster. The advantage of magnetic suspension was that it didn't need physical wheels. The train would levitate directly above the ground. It could bypass certain obstacles altogether. It could completely ignore rough hills and treacherous swamps. In theory, it could even partially replace the bunny wheels, though it could only hover a maximum of 3 meters above ground. It couldn't fly too high. It seemed this, and the Hellfire wheels were pretty evenly matched. However, the red tier magnetic suspension blueprint clearly stated, if he also possessed the level 100 powerful magnet accessory, combining the two would trigger an unexpected special effect. Well, what more was there to say? Good stuff. Tran Meng nodded in satisfaction. Next was the second item, Hell's Hat, a black round-brimmed hat. Once wearing this hat, within a 10,000-meter radius of the train, his personal physical defense would scale to match the train's armor. Another god-tier item. In his mind, This special item was almost on par with the Hell's Scepter, easily ranking as a peak-tier artifact. Previously, he had obtained the Hell's Sunglasses, which slightly boosted his overall physical stats when worn. 3 items with such similar names. Could they be a complete set? If they really were a set, he figured renaming them to Heaven might bring better luck. The last item needed no introduction. The purple tier mech blueprint, the Pope. Mewtwo hadn't even had the chance to pilot the blue tier Thunder mech yet, and now a purple tier mech had already dropped. Honestly, Mewtwo's growth rate was already incredibly fast, and he worked extremely hard. It was just a shame. Amidst the train's insane rate of development, individual progress still seemed a bit insignificant. And that summed up the entire haul this time. Smiling, Tran Mang held to Luke, leaned on his cane, and stepped through the air before landing gently on the ground. In a great mood, he began patrolling the cavern. On the left, residents were butchering the boss meat. On the right, others were mining ore. The atmosphere was incredibly harmonious. 100 things waiting to be built. Very good. The oxygen level in this cavern was naturally extremely low. Who knows how long that monster had been down here, surviving without needing oxygen. There weren't any other exits here, either. It seemed it had been slumbering in this place for a very long time. He hadn't found any signs of excrement. Could it have been surviving on iron, or just like those zombies? Boss Mang. Not far ahead, Mewtwo ran over excitedly to report. We're all done carving it up. Great job. Tran Mang smiled and nodded. Boss Mang, there's one more thing. Mewtwo scratched his head, looking both thrilled and a bit embarrassed. Over the past few days, I've cleared the normal difficulty on all 5 of the remaining maps, including Dragon Keep, and I've also cleared its extreme difficulty 2 more times. My physique has reached 19.9. I want. He took a deep breath. To request a Thunder Mech. The blue-tier Thunder Mech requires the pilot to have an overall physical fitness above 19.0. Once it surpasses 19.5, they can unleash its full power. For this goal, he had been forgetting to eat and sleep these past few days, chugging down bottles of the manly potion he brewed himself every single day. With the dual support of technology and personal effort, his growth speed was basically a complete rebirth. He had finally caught up to Zhang Yi and Zhang Er. Chen Mang stayed silent for a moment before gently patting Biaz's shoulder. You've been leading Zhang Yi and Zhang Er in training these past few days. Did you happen to notice what their current physique levels are at? No, I haven't. Your request is approved, but I have some other news to tell you. Chen Mang calmly continued. The train now has a purple tier Pope mech. It's stronger than the Thunder. Right now, they are the only 2 on the entire train who meet the requirements to use it. By the way, tell them to go find Xiao AI later to get their new mechs. As for you, just pick one of the Thunder mechs they swap out. Go on. After saying that, Chen Mang didn't stop. He continued patrolling deeper into the cave, wearing a black bowler hat, a rare sense of security rising in his heart. This was the first time since coming to this world that he could feel at ease walking away from the train like this. Actually, he really wanted to run an experiment. If this hat could provide defense on par with the train's armor, what would happen if he jumped down from 100 meters high? Thinking it over, he'd probably still die. After all, he didn't have permanent shock absorption mods inside his body. But when it came to standard ammo or weapons, as long as their level didn't exceed the train's armor, he could probably just shrug them off. I'd have to test it out later. Chen Mang walked away, leaving Biaozi standing there dumbfounded. The smile on his face slowly stiffened and vanished. After a long while, he looked down at his hands, his face full of despair. Why? He had worked his ass off, thinking he could finally pilot a Thunder like Zhang Yi and Zhang Er. Who would have thought the train would get a purple tier mech? He was still 1 step behind. Just then, Zhang Yi and Zhang Er walked by, munching on sandwiches and muttering to each other. Xiao AI told us to go pick up new mechs. I think it's called the Pope. Honestly, I don't really want to switch. I'm used to the Thunder. Same here. But we have to switch. Xiao AI said our Thunders will be given to Brother Biao. If we don't switch, Brother Biao won't have one. Guess we have no choice. Why doesn't Brother Biao want the Pope, though? Maybe he just doesn't like it. Biaozi placed his hands over his chest and took a deep breath. Watching their backs as they walked away, he forced a smile. It's fine. It's fine, Biaozi. Don't worry about anyone else. Your original goal was the thunder, right? You've already achieved your dream, and you nailed it perfectly. What others do has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to. In the end, Biaozi couldn't hold it in and slammed his fist hard into the ground. His face full of rage, he turned around and marched straight back to carriage number 2. Once he got his thunder mech, he was going to immediately jump into the extreme difficulty of the remaining maps. He had a new goal now. He wanted the Pope, too. He was the captain. How could he let his subordinates outshine him forever? If he didn't vent this frustration, his state of mind was going to be completely messed up. Inside the cave, Chen Meng watched Biaozi storm off in anger, helplessly shaking his head with a smile. It was truly too hard for Biaozi to catch up to those two monstrous geniuses, but it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. If he didn't have those two targets ahead of him, Biaozi wouldn't have improved this fast. Just a few months ago, Biaozi was merely a former contractor from before the apocalypse. He only had a bit more fighting experience than the average guy, nothing special. But now it was different. In such a short amount of time, he could already handle a lot of things on his own. His growth rate was actually insanely fast. It was just that Biaozi himself couldn't see it. All he saw were the two monstrous geniuses he needed to chase. He had no idea that his pace of improvement had created immense pressure on all of Team 1, forcing the members of Team 1 to maintain a ridiculously high growth rate as well. And Team 1's members were completely oblivious that their speed was, in turn, putting pressure on the other two teams. So in this invisible cycle of competition, everyone was forced to accelerate. Except for those two idiots. Their talent was just built different. There was no getting around it, especially when under Biaozi's guidance, they had both talent and had their training intensity cranked to the max. That kind of growth speed was simply not something Biaozi could easily catch up to. Chen Meng, who had returned to the control room, sighed and let out a helpless chuckle. Build a brand new thunder mech for Biaozi. Keep the two that Zhang Yi and Zhang Er swap out for others to use. A few members of Team 1 are about to meet the requirements anyway. He's been dreaming of this thunder for so long. Just let him play with a new one. Understood, Xiao Ace's voice echoed in the control room. Chen Meng looked up, gazing at the sparkling mining area not far away. It was a special mine. The structure was similar to iron ore, consisting of sharp-edged resource blocks jutting out of the ground. But they weren't black, nor were they bronze. They were transparent, shimmering beautifully under the light. This was level 4 titanium crystal ore. He had never seen this kind of ore before and wasn't sure of its exact use, but he knew for a fact it was a rare material. It would definitely come in handy later. Just like the first time he mined crimson core rock. He didn't know what it was for back then either. Only much later did he discover it was a core material for building mechs. Alright then. After taking a shower, Chen Meng walked over to his bed, ready to rest. He had been up all night, and his brain was feeling a bit exhausted. He didn't need to worry about the rest of the work. His part was done. Once they left this cavern, the train would hit level 11. It might even skip straight to level 12. Chen Meng slept for a very long time. In his dream, he saw himself fighting a thug with a pistol in a high-rise building. It took him a ton of effort to take the guy down, only to check and realize the gun was just a fake. Seriously, what a stupid dream. Chen Meng rubbed his eyes. After waking up and freshening up, he lit a cigarette and sat down in his chair to open the train's log. He had slept for 12 hours straight. That was pretty long. He still felt a bit sore when he woke up. A white light flashed in the control room, followed by Xiao Ace's voice. According to the data I gathered from the city ruins earlier, there's a theory that when organic beings sleep, their brainwaves enter an exceptionally stable state. From there, it's possible to resonate with the brainwaves of other beings in the universe, which forms dreams. Chen Meng couldn't be bothered to pay attention to Xiao AI. He felt her reasoning skills were still a bit too robotic. Not every question needed an answer. At least for the one just now, he absolutely did not want to hear any explanations, especially this kind of speculative theory. Looking out the window, the lights were blazing bright. A group of residents was mining in the area next to the train. The 3 security teams were maintaining order, while the rest were training in the virtual combat simulation space. During the time he slept, everything had been running normally. There were no unexpected situations. The only abnormal thing was that it was now 7 p.m. His biological clock was completely messed up again. Well, In the apocalypse, stuff like this didn't really seem to matter much anymore anyway. His plan for today was to remodel the train. After expanding the train's size, quite a few issues had popped up that needed to be tweaked gradually. For example, the carriage doors. After the expansion, they were situated way too high, over 10 meters off the ground. Everyone had to climb ladders just to get on or off. He needed to lower all the carriage doors, except for the locomotive, so the gap to the ground was only about 2 meters. That would make getting in and out much more convenient. Right. Shin Mang sat at the control panel, clicked on the custom carriage options, and began rapidly adjusting the 3D model of the train on the screen. A few minutes later, the adjustments were complete. The doors had now been shifted to the very bottom of the carriages. Originally, he planned to use the mech heart to craft climbing ladders, but the custom carriage interface already had an escalator template available, and it wasn't expensive. Spending 1,400 units of iron ore, he placed an escalator on both the left and right sides of every carriage, excluding the head of the train. The maximum width of the escalators reached 30 meters, almost covering the entire length of the carriage. This would make boarding and disembarking insanely easy. The second task was spatial remodeling. The core function of expanding the train's volume was originally to install large-scale firepower accessories. It also ensured that multiple ground combat units could be rapidly deployed. For instance, the moment the carriage doors opened, the mechs could immediately sortie. But with that came a drawback, a distorted sense of space. The control room used to be small but cozy. Now, it had become vastly larger, and the sheer emptiness around him made it feel a bit uncomfortable. He needed to remodel his control room a bit. All right. Shin Mang stood up and instructed Xiao Fong. Stock the left shelf with Coke and the right shelf with cigarettes. Fill the cigar cabinet with cigars. And also, let's see, the locomotive is 10 meters wide and 21 meters long. The control room takes up 10 meters in width and 12 meters in length, while the front section takes up 9 meters. The total area is about 120 square meters, which is even bigger than a standard apartment. He used the mech heart to create 2 shelves for food and drinks. 2 are enough. Too many would make it look like a convenience store. Tran Mang crossed his arms, frowning as he looked around. He still wasn't completely satisfied. The control panel is about 2 meters wide, covered with numerous screens. In front of it sits a chair, equipped with a joystick and a throttle. Controlling the train was mainly done through telekinesis. These devices just served as support, providing a more realistic operating feel and physical feedback. To the right of the control panel is a larger screen, which he usually used to watch movies or display large amounts of data. Aside from that, there's a refrigerator, a virtual combat training capsule, and a spatial portal. That is all the equipment currently in his control room. The most important thing is that the interior space of the carriage is 10 meters high. But to give the captain a better view, the control room is divided into 2 floors. The first floor is 7.2 meters high, and the second floor is 2.8 meters. The control panel and main equipment are all on the first floor, giving the captain an optimal panoramic view. For this very reason, when the carriage was expanded, all the doors defaulted to the roof. You had to climb a ladder to get up and down. He didn't plan on modifying the control room. He felt this layout was pretty good. After thinking for a moment, Tran Mang walked over to the control panel and selected the floor-to-ceiling glass windows from the carriage customization menu. He installed floor-to-ceiling windows wrapping around the second floor, making it feel much more spacious and open. Its defense was on par with the train's armor, but it definitely wasn't cheap. It cost a whopping 300,000 units of iron ore. Yeah, after finishing everything, Tran Mang stepped out to the edge of the second floor, looking down at the residents working hard below. This feeling really wasn't bad at all. After that, he even crafted a level 1 missile, told Bu-2 and the others to carry it into the control room, and placed it on a specially prepared rack. He built another rack and placed 10 massive Gatling wave guns on it. Now, the overall look was much better. He knew he had no talent for interior design. Pulling this off was already his limit. Going from carriage number 2 to the control room was no longer a simple task. Master Mang's control room was located on the second floor. To get there from carriage number 2, one had to climb a nearly 8-meter-tall ladder before finally arriving. The sense of stratification was crystal clear. Tran Mang stood at the edge of the second floor, looking down at carriage number 2 and the surrounding connecting areas. In that moment, he completely lost the feeling of being in a train control room. Instead, it felt like standing in a massive space station or a military base. He could clearly see the production lines in carriage number 2, as well as the spatial portal installed there. Right away, he used the mech heart to build an elevator, placing it at the intersection between carriage number 2 and the control room. This way, when Chu Fuang and the others came looking for him, they could easily take the elevator straight up. The mech heart was naturally designed to manufacture such lifestyle accessories, and it could also directly connect to the electrical circuits and generators. Perfect. Tran Mang stood at the edge of the second floor, taking in the panoramic view of the entire interior space of the carriages. He really loved this space station-like vibe. Notably, after the expansion of missile carriage number 14, its capacity had increased from just 1 missile to a maximum of 8. Theoretically, if he wanted to, he could launch 8 missiles simultaneously. It's just that such a scenario would highly likely never happen, unless he achieved absolute financial freedom with copper ore. Time slowly ticked away, and before he knew it, 2 days had passed. Right now, many residents were still mining. Some would take a nap halfway through and continue working right after waking up. Tran Mang didn't enforce any specific working hours. They could rest whenever they wanted. It was perfectly fine. Working hours were extremely flexible. They could even choose not to work at all. It's just that, so far, he hadn't seen anyone actually quit. It seemed everyone still craved the feeling of earning their own food. Eating what they earned gave them peace of mind. Over the past few days, he carried out some minor renovations to the Hang Tin Hao, mainly focusing on improving the living environment. As for the previously planned entertainment area, he had handed the design blueprints over to Lai Doi Ko and was just waiting to see the results. Tran Mang sat in front of the control panel, looking at the resources displayed on the interface. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up in satisfaction. Train name, Hang Tin Hao. Train level, level 10. Train accessories, level 100 train furnace, level 100 drill bit, level 13 carriage steel armor, level 100 train speaker. Number of carriages, 14. Resource units, 30.87 million iron ore units, 2.57 million wood units, 1.17 million copper ore units, 4.48 million crimson core rock units. Legacy points, 50. Reputation points, 180. Upgrade requirements. 3 mandatory vehicle accessories have been crafted. Cost, 20,000 units of level 3 iron ore. Requires all accessories in the carriage to exceed level 200 and possess 10 breakthrough effects. Over these 2.5 days, following his orders, the residents prioritized mining the 4 level for iron ore veins. Nearly 6,000 people worked continuously with intense enthusiasm. In just 2.5 days, they completely mined 2 out of the 4 level 4 iron ore veins, mainly because there were too many people and not everyone could fit inside the veins. The rest could only shift to mining the surrounding lower level veins. The total output yielded 28 million units of iron ore, with the 2 level 4 iron ore veins alone contributing up to 20 million units. Perfect. Tran Mang nodded in satisfaction, unable to hold back a smile as he spoke. Good news always lifts the spirits. Let's upgrade first. Once the train reaches level 11, we'll see what's next. He immediately consumed 150,000 units of iron ore to finish crafting 3 red-tier accessories: the Starring Energy Shield, the Comet Main Cannon, and the Inferno Wheels. He only crafted them to meet the upgrade requirements, not rushing to upgrade them further, because the cost was simply too exorbitant. Among them, the Comet Main Cannon would definitely be upgraded later, but it wasn't a high priority right now. He'd wait until he had an abundance of iron ore before considering it. Once all requirements were met, he spent another 2 million units of iron ore to proceed with the train's upgrade. The next moment, a line of text appeared on the control panel screen. Your train has been upgraded to level 11. Unlocked more craftable accessories. Level 11. Hang Tin Hao has officially become a level 11 train. He immediately opened the list of newly craftable accessories. This time, only 2 items appeared, but both were red-tier accessories. Dark Matter Resonance Device, red-tier accessory. Costs nearly 50,000 units of iron ore to craft. Resource Tracking Device, red tier accessory. Costs nearly 50,000 units of iron ore to craft. The resource tracking device was a higher tier upgrade of the enemy detection radar, capable of being upgraded to even higher levels. Unlike the enemy detection radar, which maxed out at level 3, this meant a much wider detection range. But for him, this item wasn't absolutely necessary just yet. Both his resource radar and enemy detection radar had already reached level 100, with a detection range of up to 100,000 meters. There was no need to replace them for now. Red tier wasn't even the highest quality anyway. Above it were gold, pink, and 7-color tiers. Waiting until he had 7-color tier accessories to replace them would be much more cost-effective in the long run. Additionally, after the train upgraded to level 11, a new button appeared on the control panel. Tran Mang stared thoughtfully at this function, named Dream Manifestation. Its effect was to collect the dreams of the train's members whenever they slept, storing them in a small, handheld ornament resembling a sunny doll on the control panel. Once the progress reached 100%, it would form a dream stone. The more intense the dream and the longer its duration, the faster the progress increased. Dreamstone? He was a bit confused. He picked up the sunny doll and toyed with it, but there was no explanation whatsoever regarding the Dreamstone's utility. Well, whatever. He'll just wait until we return to Danger Valley and ask the other trains. Currently, he was in an uncharted area, completely unable to connect to Danger Valley's radio network. Regardless, this definitely wasn't something useless. After dealing with all this, he finally turned his attention to the next accessories that needed upgrading. For instance, the maglev system. This accessory could replace the Windfire wheels. It was time for the Windfire wheels to retire, even though he felt a bit reluctant in his heart. Before crafting the maglev system, he spent 980,000 units of iron ore, upgrading the wheel-changing mechanism to level 10 in one go. From the initial 3-wheel slots, it had now expanded to 12 slots, allowing him to seamlessly switch between 12 different types of wheels at will, while also triggering 2 new breakthrough effects. The level 5 breakthrough effect of the wheel-changing mechanism granted the wheels a defense level equivalent to either the armor or the energy shield, taking the highest value. If he had possessed this earlier, he definitely wouldn't have been hit. It's just that, if he crashed headfirst into the cave wall at this speed, his brains would definitely be rattling. Without a moment's hesitation, Tran Mang directly consumed 2.62 million units of iron ore, upgrading the Eternal Shock Absorber and the Internal Spatial Stabilizer to level 100, while also acquiring 4 brand new super effects. Level 20 Eternal Shock Absorber Super Effect. Level 50 Eternal Shock Absorber Super Effect, 0. Super Effect of Level 100 Perpetual Shock Absorber. Super Effect of Level 20 Internal Space Stabilizer. Makes spatial gates and other spatial-type accessories within the train more stable. Super Effect of Level 50 Internal Space Stabilizer. When the train enters a time rift, the crew inside will not suffer any negative effects from the flow of time. Super Effect of Level 100 Internal Space Stabilizer. When the train initiates a wormhole jump, the interior of the train will remain completely unaffected. This Perpetual Shock Absorber accessory didn't even have a single super effect from the start. It only provided pure stat boosts. But the level 100 Perpetual Shock Absorber was now much more reliable. Even if the train slammed into a cave wall at nearly 2,000 kilometers per hour, the crew inside wouldn't even feel dizzy from the impact. However, Chun Mang looked at the super effects of the Internal Space Stabilizer with a rather weird expression. This thing can guarantee spatial stability even in a time rift or during a wormhole jump. Is this really just a gold tier accessory? At first glance, it feels like it should at least be red tier. But for now, none of this was useful. He hadn't encountered any of these things yet, so maybe they'd come in handy later. On the flip side, the effect that stabilized spatial gates and spatial accessories was incredibly practical. Tens of millions of iron ore units were thrown in just like that. Chun Mang pondered for a moment before making a firm decision. Today would be all about speed. Since the magnetic hover tech was already built, he might as well upgrade the thrusters while he was at it. Currently, the Hang Tin Hao had 2 thrusters, a blue-tier nitrogen thruster and a gold-tier hyperenergy thruster. He consumed 1.98 million units of iron ore to upgrade both accessories, to level 100. The speed boost from the nitrogen thruster reached 1,020 kilometers per hour. The speed boost from the hyper-energy thruster hit 2,040 kilometers per hour. This stuff is absolutely insane, Chen Meng sighed helplessly. The red-tier magnetic hover accessory had a base speed of 100 kilometers per hour, gaining an extra 100 kilometers per hour with each level. The blue-tier nitrogen thruster had a base speed of 30 kilometers per hour, gaining an extra 10 kilometers per hour per level. The gold-tier hyper-energy thruster had a base speed of 60 kilometers per hour, gaining an extra 20 kilometers per hour per level. At first glance, the magnetic hover seemed completely overwhelming, at least on the stats panel. But he couldn't help it. He had a cheat code. With unlimited upgrades at his fingertips, he traded 1.98 million units of iron ore for an extra 3,060 kilometers per hour of speed. The train's current top speed had now reached a staggering 5,040 kilometers per hour. And this was its max speed under completely normal conditions, without activating any of the train's special skills. No super effects were activated either. It was entirely based on pure stats. This speed was already catching up to Erden's train when it had its special skills active. But it didn't stop there. Both thrusters also gained their corresponding super effects. The level 20, 50, and 100 super effects for the hyper-energy thruster all halved energy consumption. The level 20, 50, and 100 super effects for the nitrogen thruster also halved energy consumption. On top of that, the level 5 super effect for both accessories was another half reduction in energy drain, meaning each part stacked 4 layers of consumption reduction. As the levels increased, the energy consumption naturally became massive. These effects made traveling at extreme speeds much more economical, even though the drain was still quite heavy. But it wasn't over yet. This race to break the speed limit continued. Chen Meng looked at the wind and fire wheels component on the train's 3D model, feeling a tinge of reluctance. But in the end, he chose to let the wheel replacement set devour the wind and fire wheels, transferring their speed to the magnetic hover tech. The next moment, a few lines of data popped up on the control screen. Blue-tier accessory successfully devoured. Magnetic hover speed increased by 120 kilometers per hour, with a slight chance of inheriting the level 10 super effect of the wind and fire wheels. When traveling downwind in stormy weather, the wind and fire wheels will ignite, massively boosting speed. Reading the second line, Chen Meng burst into laughter. Once he got back to Danger Valley, he'd have to burn some incense to the heavens. He knew damn well his luck had always been incredibly good. With this super effect paired with the weather control device, the train speed would definitely keep skyrocketing. Furthermore, both the hyper-energy thruster and the nitrogen thruster shared a common super effect. The two thrusters could merge into one, providing an even more brutal boost to speed. Shall AI calculate this for me? If all super effects are activated, what's the absolute max speed the train can hit with its current payload? 8,900 kilometers per hour, Xiao Ace's voice echoed through the cabin. If traveling at this extreme speed, it will consume 1 level 4 energy stone per hour. I've got a ton of super effects that reduce consumption. Yes, without those consumption-reducing effects, it would require at least a level 5 energy stone. Chen Meng curled his lip and didn't say anything else. 1 level 4 energy stone was equal to 500,000 units of iron ore, meaning he'd be burning through about 5 million slices of bread every hour. 8,900 kilometers per hour, which is roughly Mach 7.26. What kind of concept is this? In his previous world, the cruising speed of a commercial airliner was only about 900 kilometers per hour. The Hang Tin-Hao was 10 times faster. The top speed of a famous fighter jet was 2,750 kilometers per hour, and the Hang Tin-Hao was 3.2 times faster than that. Some top-tier missiles topped out around Mach 10, meaning the Hang Tin-Hao was already at 0.7 times their speed. At this speed, flying around his old planet would only take a little over 4 hours. Basically, this was already the absolute pinnacle of speed for a planetary object. Of course, if he wanted to fly out into space, this speed was still far from enough. Forget about roaming the cosmos. Even a dog you were walking would complain it was too slow. A corresponding warning flashed on the screen. Speeds exceeding 3,000 kilometers per hour require at least level 10 armor. Speeds exceeding 4,000 kilometers per hour require at least level 11 armor. Speeds exceeding 5,000 kilometers per hour require at least level 12 armor. Speeds exceeding 6,000 kilometers per hour require at least level 13 armor. Speeds exceeding 7,000 kilometers per hour require at least level 14 armor. With the train's current armor, the maximum safe speed was only nearly 6,000 kilometers per hour, exceeding that would risk disintegration. Since then, the train's speed had instantly been taken to a whole new level. Even without activating any special skills, its max speed absolutely crushed the Travel Frog train. This doesn't seem quite right, Chen Meng sighed helplessly. The Travel Frog train was supposed to be the Hang Tin House Scout, specializing in speed. Yet now, its raw speed wasn't even as fast as his. That didn't make any sense at all. But thinking about it, he couldn't hold back a smile. He liked it that way. The haul this time really wasn't bad at all. In total for this speed upgrade, he had burned through 15.1 million units of iron ore. For a short while, he basically wouldn't have to worry about speed anymore. The days that followed would be a long, drawn-out period of mining. As day after day passed, even the level 2 iron ore veins were completely hollowed out. Normally, if he ran into level 2 ore, he definitely wouldn't stop the train. After all, each vein only yielded about 200,000 to 300,000 units of iron ore, which wasn't much. But here, the veins were clustered together in huge numbers. He couldn't just pass them by. Every little bit counts, and altogether, there were 14 level 2 iron ore veins. He also had a special item, a level 3 iron ore refresh ticket he got from the zombie basin that he hadn't used yet. Originally, he planned to save it for an emergency, waiting until he was truly out of, or to use it. But now, there was no need to hoard it. He activated it immediately and mined it all in one go. This place didn't just have iron and copper ores, but also titanium crystal ores. It took almost a month to completely strip all the mineral veins here, mostly because the low-level ores ate up a lot of time. During that entire month, nearly every resident hadn't taken a single day off. Rumble, when the horn, which hadn't been blown for a long time, finally blared once more, the Hang Tin House set off on its journey back, speeding straight toward Danger Valley along the train tunnel. It was time to go home. After a month of not seeing the sun, he honestly kind of missed it. It felt like he had been in secluded cultivation in the dark for a whole month. Today, he was finally coming out. The Hang Tin House hovered at a low altitude within the train tunnel, hurtling forward at breakneck speed. A deafening roar rang out, and the distortion of the air could even be seen with the naked eye as its speed was pushed to the absolute limit. In a wasteland within the Danger Valley region, Chen Meng steered the Hang Tin House to the familiar spot where they usually parked. Once the train stabilized, the cars slowly lowered to the ground. The magnetic wheels lacked physical form, so the cars touched the ground directly. The temporary stairs they had just built were no longer needed. All it took was one step to walk right out. Just as dusk settled, all the residents excitedly stepped out of the train. Boss Meng had said that tonight there would be a massive feast. For the next few days, they'd get to rest and relax, with everyone getting free time to watch movies and enjoy awesome entertainment. Ouch! Outside the train, a middle-aged man lay flat on his back on the ground, wincing as he rubbed his neck. The high-intensity labor over the past month left his entire body aching. If his constitution hadn't been enhanced after the apocalypse, right now, he probably wouldn't even be able to move. But despite his aching body, his spirit was incredibly high, especially when he looked at his resident info panel. Name Damao. ID number 4998. Train resident. Position none. Balance 2 Hongxing vouchers. Treatment level Tier 1 resident. Upgrade progress 100%. Mental power 11.4. Overall physique 11.7. He was originally from the Tsanglong train. Having joined the Hongxing train for less than 2 months, he had smoothly promoted to a Tier 1 resident and even earned 2 Hongxing vouchers. Even though he was so exhausted his entire body ached, he couldn't be happier. He kept staring at the resident info panel displayed on his iris chip. Even though nothing changed each time he checked, he just couldn't help but look at it again. It was as if all his hard work over the past few days had materialized into hard data, a direct feedback that brought him complete peace of mind. The other residents were basically just like him. Their faces were scrunched up from exhaustion, but a smile constantly hung on their lips. Among them, the original group from the Tsanglong train was the happiest. Most of them were on the verge of being promoted to Tier 1 residents and could soon start earning Hongxing vouchers. Even the 1,200 slaves originally under the Shun family's control had completely integrated into the Hongxing train over the past month. Influenced by the environment and the surrounding atmosphere, they mined with incredible vigor. If you force someone to eat filth, they definitely won't eat it. But if hundreds of people are fighting over a single bite, that person will likely rush in too, just to see if it's salty or bland. Humans are creatures highly susceptible to their environment and atmosphere, often doing inexplicable things under specific circumstances. Only when completely alone can one maintain absolute rationality. The sunset sure is beautiful. A middle-aged man sat on the hillside, a cigarette pinched between his fingers. Watching the sun slowly set in the distance, he smiled faintly and muttered to himself. It's been almost 2 years since the apocalypse began. Time really does fly. When the apocalypse broke out, my wife and I were still fighting. I can't even remember what it was about. Probably just some trivial household stuff anyway. That day, I went out to buy her some durian, planning to go back and apologize. But not long after I left the house, the apocalypse hit. When I ran back, I searched the whole house, but couldn't find her. In the end, I found her mangled body in the apartment complex's garden. She had gone out to look for me after the apocalypse started. Because whenever I threw a tantrum, I always liked to hide in the garden of our apartment complex. The moment I saw her body, it hurt so much. And I was terrified. At that time, the entire apartment complex was filled with screams and monster roars. All I had in my hand was a kitchen knife. I used to always ask myself if she truly loved me. It wasn't until that moment that I knew for sure. She did love me. Even as the apocalypse broke out, she still risked her life to come find me. It's just that by the time I realized this, nothing mattered anymore. I thought about dying with her, but I didn't have the courage. The young man sitting next to him stayed quiet for a moment before hesitantly asking, "What happened next, Uncle Lee?" After that, Uncle Lee shook his head, looking down at the glowing red cherry of his cigarette. He stayed silent for a long time before speaking softly. After that, I just barely scraped by. Someone in the complex managed to kill a zombie and picked up a train token. Everyone immediately rushed toward that train to escape the city. Then we got stuck on the road, so we jumped trains and kept running. It was total chaos. Forget it, I don't want to think about it anymore. It's not exactly a fond memory anyway. Ah, the young man nodded, hugging his knees as he watched the sunset fade behind the mountains. I want to find a wife who truly loves me, too. Stop dreaming. Uncle Lee snuffed out his cigarette, standing up and waving his hand. Asking for something like that after the apocalypse is way too luxurious. While you're still young, just listen to your lower half and go have some fun in the red light district. Don't wait until you're my age. You wouldn't have the energy for it even if you wanted to. Let's go. The evening feast is about to start. Uncle Lee didn't say anything else. His mood was a bit heavy today, partly because he missed his wife and partly because his zombie monster cage still hadn't made any progress. Especially when he saw those other residents gathered in groups, talking and laughing, he couldn't help but wonder. If his wife were still alive and with him on the Hongxing train, they probably would have been very happy. But on second thought, if she hadn't died, they might not have even survived until today. His wife was quite beautiful, and in the apocalypse, beauty is sometimes a sin. It sounds vulgar, but that's just the reality of it. In the apocalypse, women rarely meet a good end, unless they're like Zhang Damei. Right now, you almost never see a train with a female captain. The few exceptions are all women with incredibly deep schemes, far stronger than most men. There is absolutely no such thing as relying on one's body to win over trusted subordinates. That kind of power structure simply cannot exist in the apocalypse. The sun completely set behind the mountains. The evening feast officially began. This feast was incredibly lavish. 10 residents gathered around each table, which was fully loaded with dishes: pan-fried mantou with minced meat, pork trotter soup, braised pork with potatoes, stir-fried mantou with pork trotters, steamed rice rolls, pickled mustard greens with pork trotters, cola-braised pork trotters, and ice-cold cola. All kinds of dishes, an incredibly rich spread. After a hard day's work, all the residents sat at their tables, then stood up in unison, standing on their tiptoes to look at Boss Mang on the high platform in the distance. For many of them, this was their first time seeing Boss Mang with their own eyes. They hadn't seen him before because the train was simply too huge and there were too many people. Chun Mang stood on the platform, looking down at the hundreds of densely packed resident tables below, with the train's headlights illuminating the entire area. He smiled, taking the microphone from Lao Zhu, his voice echoing across the entire train through the loudspeakers. Is the food to your liking? It's perfect. A deafening cheer instantly erupted from below the platform. To have a meal like this in the apocalypse, not bad, right? More than just not bad, Boss Mang. Chun Mang paused for a moment, waiting for the cheers to die down before continuing. On the Hongxing train, as long as you contribute, you will absolutely be rewarded. As long as you work hard, I will reward every single one of you accordingly. Let the evening feast officially begin. After speaking, he handed the microphone to Lao Zhu beside him, then leaned on his cane and slowly walked toward a nearby round table. And right at this moment, boom, a missile roared out of Car 14, exploding in the air into a dazzling firework. Immediately after, one by one, they shot up continuously. Over a dozen missiles bloomed in the sky one after another, just like a real fireworks display. Upbeat music also started playing almost at the same time. The evening feast had officially begun. Chun Mang sat down at the round table, glanced at the few people holding their chopsticks in front of him, casually picked up a piece of chicken, popped it into his mouth, and smiled. Eat up. There were only a few people at this table, including Lao Zhu, Biaozi, Zhang Damei, the Team 3 captain, and Li Shiji. The dishes on the table were clearly much richer and more exquisite than the other tables, like the chicken stewed with potatoes. They had even slaughtered an extra pig to make braised pork ribs with potatoes, all prepared by the private chef's small kitchen. Everyone's reactions were different. Lao Zhu had just sat down when he hurriedly stood back up to pour a full cup of iced tea and placed it in front of Chun Mang. Boss Mang loved drinking iced tea. Biaozi was visibly thrilled, unable to hide the excitement on his face. Meanwhile, Zhang Damei, the Team 3 captain, and Li Shiji were a bit stiff. They sat entirely too upright, looking more like they were in a meeting than eating a meal. Chun Mang ate very quickly and didn't linger for long. With him there, the atmosphere was clearly stifled. Everyone's conversations were noticeably more guarded, making it hard for them to truly relax. After finishing his meal, he headed back to his private cabin alone. Sitting in his chair, Chun Mang checked the train's available resources on the control panel while glancing out the window. Clearly, the moment he left, the overall noise outside instantly jumped up a few decibels. Xiao I'm here, Xiao's voice echoed through the cabin. Keep an ear out and see if anyone is bad-mouthing me. Chun Mang curled his lip, adding half-jokingly, if anyone gets drunk and talks trash about me, make sure you record every word. Understood. When Erdan stepped down as the captain of the Tsanglong train, all the detachable accessories were completely dismantled. That included the beer production line, which was all transferred over to the planet train. Because of that, Chun Mang deliberately prepared plenty of alcohol for tonight's feast, letting everyone drink to their heart's content. Besides, he wanted to see if anyone would spill their true feelings after getting drunk. His gaze shifted to the sunshine doll ornament on the control panel. Almost a month had passed, yet the progress was only at 78%. Maybe it's because when the human body is too exhausted, it's hard to dream, which explains the slow progress. He pondered it briefly but quickly let it go. He didn't really care, since he still had no idea what this thing was actually used for anyway. Afterward, Chun Mang moved on to check the total resources harvested this time. Aside from the initial 28 million units of iron ore mined, they later gathered another 35 million units of iron ore, 17 million units of copper ore, and 10.29 million units of titanium crystal ore. The total resources currently available on the train were 55.02 million units of iron ore and 2.57 million units of wood, 18.04 million units of copper ore, 4.48 million units of crimson core magma, and 10.29 million units of titanium crystal ore. He had struck it rich overnight. Chun Mang absolutely loved high-level zones. Only in high-level zones could you find opportunities to get this filthy rich. If he had stayed in the wasteland Iron Ridge, he wouldn't have mined this much iron, or even if he worked himself to death. Even if he monopolized all the iron ore in the wasteland Iron Ridge, he could never unearth this kind of volume. If the blue zone was already this lucrative, it made him look forward to the purple zone even more. The purple zone should definitely have level 5 iron ore, right? He had never seen level 5 ore before and didn't know its yield, but a level 5 iron ore mine yielding tens of millions of units should be standard. Since they were operating deep underground without any sunlight, the solar panels were virtually useless. Even the cosmic gatherer couldn't absorb anything. Down at tens of thousands of meters below ground, it was basically hopeless. However, compared to their massive haul this time, that loss was just a drop in the ocean. It didn't matter at all. The tens of millions of iron and copper ores gave Chun Mang an immense sense of security. Time to upgrade the armor first. He leaned back in his chair with satisfaction, looking at the control screen. Upgrading the armor from level 12 to level 13 required 2 million units of iron ore per carriage. From level 13 to level 14, each carriage needed 3 million. The planet train had a total of 14 carriages, 1 locomotive, and 1 behemoth carriage, bringing the total base cost to 48 million units of iron ore. But the level 10 ultra effect of the steel carriage armor cut the upgrade costs in half. After consuming 24 million units of iron ore, the planet train's armor instantly leveled up to 14. Now, that felt a whole lot safer. Chun Mang looked at the train's 3D hologram on the screen and breathed a sigh of relief. Level 14 armor was safe enough. Pushing the armor to level 15 would require a staggering 40 million units of iron ore, and the train currently only had 31.02 million units left. No rush. Level 14 armor was more than enough to survive the Blue Zone's danger valley. After that, he decided to level up the train to 12 first and see what Xiao Lu looked like once he woke up. The upgrade conditions weren't difficult at all. The 2 mandatory vehicle accessories were already completed, and their levels far exceeded the requirements. After spending 100,000 units of iron ore to finish crafting the dark matter resonator and the resource tracker, Chun Mang spent another 3 million units of iron ore. The planet train officially advanced to level 12. With resources in hand and thick armor protecting him, Chun Mang finally felt like he had a solid foothold in this apocalypse. In just a month, the train had leveled up directly from 10 to 12. From this moment on, the planet train had officially become a level 12 mechanical train. It could finally be considered one of the top-tier trains in Danger Valley. Truth be told, it already was one, but before, only its combat power was up to par while its level wasn't. Now, both its level and combat power were perfectly matched. The next moment, familiar text appeared on the train's control screen. Your train has reached level 12. No new craftable accessories have been unlocked at this time. That wasn't easy. Chun Mang leaned back, propped his feet on the control panel, and lit a victory cigar. He looked at the text on the screen with a hint of emotion. Time to prepare for the purple zone. Once he left Danger Valley, he wouldn't be able to enter the train tunnels anymore, which meant he could never return to the Sand River Plain. Because of this, he planned to spend the next few days finding that short man in the Sand River Plain to give him a gift. A tiny fraction of his current resources would be an enormous blessing to a low-level train. While he was at it, he could also show off his level 12 train a bit. An S-rank potential, level 12 mechanical train, the planet. This was definitely something worth bragging about. Chun Mang wasn't the type to show off or reveal his trump cards. It was mostly to inspire and give hope to those fledgling trains so people wouldn't despair too much. Yeah, let's just go with that excuse. Sitting in the control cabin, he scrolled through the train's comms screen. During this time, although he couldn't connect to Danger Valley's public comms because he was in an uncharted zone, his connection with Air Dan hadn't been severed. They could still chat normally. In the past month, Air Dan had found another encounter map and was currently rushing back. He should be arriving soon. After all, no matter how vast Danger Valley was, it wouldn't take long with Air Dawn's speed. Afterward, Chun Mang began checking the changes that occurred after upgrading the train to level 12. He didn't even bother mentioning minor changes like the slight increase in base speed, as they were practically negligible. Leveling up to 12 didn't unlock any new craftable accessories. The number of new accessories was 0, and no special functions had appeared either. In other words, reaching level 12 barely brought any major changes. Chen Meng narrowed his eyes at the upgrade requirements for level 13. Just as he thought, it wasn't simple. Level 13 was clearly a massive bottleneck. He had figured out the pattern. Right before these major thresholds, the preceding couple of levels wouldn't have any obvious changes. Before he could think any further, the enemy detection radar's alarm began blaring incessantly. A train rapidly approached from the sky, landing right in front of him. Only then did the ear-piercing sonic boom catch up. Air Dan had arrived. Boss Mang. Air Dan stepped off his train, staring up at the colossal steel beast before him with absolute shock in his eyes. Hasn't it only been a month? How did it change this much? It's all right, Chen Meng said with a laugh as he hopped down to the ground. The feast has already started. Come in and get some food first. When you're done, they'll take you somewhere interesting. Okay. Air Dan dazedly pulled his gaze away from the planet. Compared to this colossus, his traveling frog looked like nothing more than a miniature toy. The feast ended quickly and didn't drag on for too long. After all, most of the residents had been working non-stop for almost a month, and their bodies were pushed to the absolute limit. In a state of extreme excitement, they managed to stay mentally awake. But after a few bottles of alcohol and a carb-heavy meal, many of them collapsed onto the tables, falling asleep mid-bite. Honestly, this startled Chen Meng at first. He thought it was food poisoning. If he actually had to send all those people to the medical bay, who knows how much iron ore it would cost him. Luckily, Xiao AI confirmed they were just in a deep sleep. Otherwise, tonight's chefs would have definitely been executed. What really pleased him was that, despite quite a few people getting hammered, not a single one badmouthed him. However, this also left him a bit puzzled. Sitting in the control cabin, Chen Meng watched the residents outside cleaning up the mess. Frowning, he said, Xiao AI, do you think Lao Zhu guessed ID? Have you eavesdrop on them? He only drank 2 bottles of beer. And he kept saying Boss Meng all night, praising me nonstop. Xiao AI paused for a moment before continuing. I can't make a precise judgment, but 89% of Lao Zhu's conversations consisted of praising you, Boss Meng. Perhaps it wasn't flattery, but rather an honest description of what you've done. After all, Boss Meng is truly incredible. Xiao AI, I'm here. You've been corrupted. Chen Meng shook his head and didn't say anything else. He just pressed a button on the control panel. Instantly, the very first carriage of the locomotive slowly opened up. As Air Dan drove the traveling frog into the carriage, the doors slowly sealed shut behind it. He was planning to take Air Dan to the train tunnel. With its current capabilities, Air Dan train couldn't drill such a deep tunnel on its own. But that was fine. He just needed to link up and follow along. Now that its level matched its combat power, from this moment on, the planet was a true monster in Danger Valley. Shortly after, Air Dan took the elevator down from the 2nd floor of the control cabin to the 1st. Boss Meng. Standing on the 2nd floor, Air Dan looked around at the floor-to-ceiling glass windows and the cabin's interior decor. Unable to hide his shock, he said, your control cabin is seriously mind-blowing. It's starting to look like a luxurious CEO's office. All you need is to hold a glass of wine by the window, staring out at the horizon while swirling it. He sighed, shaking his head with a bitter smile. Compared to this, my control cabin is basically a bird's nest. Really? Hearing the praise, the corners of Chen Meng's lips curled up unconsciously. Glancing back at his cabin's interior, it suddenly looked a lot more pleasing to the eye. I'm not exactly great at decorating. It just felt a bit empty and lacked a human touch, so I threw in a few things to warm it up. Well, sticking an entire missile right here probably doesn't add much of a human touch, does it? This is purely a personal preference. I like looking at these things. Do you have any suggestions? Pick 10 beautiful girls and have them stand in the control cabin every day. Too tacky, Chen Meng shook his head. Besides, I prefer to be alone most of the time. I don't like having other people in the control cabin. Air Dan thought for a moment, then hesitantly said, how about buying a really huge leather sofa? That could work. The next moment, accompanied by the sound of a giant drill extending and spinning wildly, the Hongxinghao plunged deep underground, heading straight for the train tunnel. Inside the tunnel, the Hongxinghao hovered in midair, hurtling south along the tunnel's axis. Having passed through here many times, Meng knew there was no danger. The tunnel was almost perfectly straight with minimal curvature. The speed on the control screen kept climbing, 1,802 kilometers per hour, 2,239 kilometers per hour, 3,223 kilometers per hour. And then, it broke the threshold. An earth-shattering sonic boom echoed throughout the tunnel, piercing right into the train cars. Extreme speed brought extreme pressure, but thanks to the built-in spatial stabilizer, neither of them felt any discomfort or tightness in their chests. It was just that their eyes could barely keep up with the incandescent lights along the tunnel walls. Everything stretched into a blinding white blur, zipping backwards. This. Dan stared dumbfounded at the screen, his voice unconsciously pitching up. Boss Mang, what's with this speed? It's already over 4,000 kilometers per hour. 5,000. Mang smiled, pointing at the number on the screen. 5,040 kilometers per hour. No, wait, Boss Mang. Did you activate some special speed skill or super effect on the train? Nope. This is just its normal top speed. But, Dan stood there, utterly stupefied. His biggest advantage had always been speed. But even with its special skills deactivated, the travel frog maxed out at around 300 kilometers per hour. Compared to the Hongxing Hao, he didn't even have that advantage anymore. Boss Mang, I suddenly feel like my travel frog is just a piece of junk. Hey now, you can't say that. Mang waved his hand. No matter how fast the Hongxing Hao is, it can't be in two places at once. I still need you to handle a lot of things. Young people need to have a fighting spirit. Don't sell yourself short so easily. Boss Mang, I don't know if I gave you some kind of illusion, but I need to make one thing clear. I'm not young anymore, Boss Mang. I'm really not a young man anymore. Doesn't matter. Mang pointed at the text on the screen. Look, where are we? Zombie Basin? Dan snapped back to reality. Boss Mang, we're already back in the Zombie Basin? We can cross the regional borders? Yeah, taking you to a good place. Last time, it took hours to get from Danger Valley to the Sand River Plain. This time, it only takes a few dozen minutes. When the Hongxing Hao passed through the elevator and appeared at the Babel Tower, Dan stood in a daze, looking around, completely clueless as to what was going on. Whoa! The Hongxing Hao switched to its Cloud Rabbit wheels, landing on the flat ground of the Sand River Plain. Mang stepped out of the control cabin, walking on air step by step until he touched the ground. Dan followed behind, looking down at the ground nearly 10 meters below, then looking back at Mang, who seemed to be executing some sort of void-walking technique, literally treading on air. After a moment of silence, his mouth twitched, and he finally obediently climbed down the side ladder. Were his eyes playing tricks on him? Boss Mang looked like he was flying. Whatever. It wouldn't even be surprising if Boss Mang could fly. At this point, he felt completely numb to it all. If Boss Mang said he was God descending to save the world, he'd believe it. This is the Sand River Plain. Mang leaned on his cane, looking into the distance with a smile. This might be the last time we stand here. We won't have a chance to come back in the future. You've been in the Sand River Plain for so long. You must have some attachment to it, right? Of course I do. Dan nodded, letting out a sigh. The Sand River Plain holds a lot of my memories. But Boss Mang, are we waiting for someone? Yeah. Mang gave a slight nod. 2 friends I met back in the White Snow Ridge Wilderness. Before we leave, I want to give them a little gift. We probably won't have the chance to meet again after this. I contacted them beforehand. They're just a bit slow. Friends? Dan fell silent for a moment, then turned to look at Mang. Boss Mang, you really are too kind. Going out of your way to make a trip like this just to give gifts to 2 friends from the White Zone. An ordinary person definitely couldn't do something like this. To Mang, going far away or coming back didn't matter. What mattered was leaving no regrets. I'm not that great. Mang pulled 2 cigarettes from his pocket, handed one to Dan, and smiled. One of them was once chased by monsters. At the time, he even turned around to warn me to run, and traded me some spider silk. That batch of spider silk was crucial back then. Thanks to it, I was able to move freely in the Kunlun Mountains region. The other one gifted me an oxygen generator component, which was equally vital. I had just obtained the drill component in the Kunlun Mountains, and an oxygen generator was the only thing I needed to start mining underground. After that, I dug out all the underground ore in the White Snow Ridge Wilderness. They both did me a huge favor. If it weren't for those two, my rise wouldn't have been so fast. I'm a man who remembers his debts. And in this world, it's not easy to meet someone who treats you well. Since I was lucky enough to meet them, naturally, I have to cherish it. I don't expect anything in return. It's just so that when I'm old and look back on these things, I can smile. So my heart won't feel any shame, knowing I didn't leave any debts unpaid. Hearing this, Erdan just nodded silently in agreement, saying nothing more. To be honest, this was exactly what he admired most about Boss Mang. It was also what made him feel incredibly secure following this man. Boss Mang was the type of person who would treat you well if you treated him well. It sounded simple and obvious, but in reality, it was exceedingly rare. Anyone could repay hostility with hostility, but repaying kindness with kindness? Not everyone could do that. Right at that moment, the piercing blare of train horns suddenly rang out from the distance. Two trains came rushing forward almost side by side at breakneck speed, thick black smoke billowing from their cars. Behind them, another train was in hot pursuit, its doomsday cannons roaring relentlessly. Clearly, this was a deadly chase. Boss Mang. Erdan's expression changed, and he instinctively reached out to pull Chun Mang back toward the train. Even though Boss Mang's train was insanely high level, once he stepped off it, he was no different from an ordinary person. In this kind of chaotic crossfire, bullets didn't have eyes. Getting caught in the collateral damage would be disastrous. No need. Chun Mang patted Erdan's shoulder, gesturing for him to stand behind him, then calmly looked at the three approaching trains. He slowly raised his right hand, opened his palm, and softly spoke. The next moment, the mechanical train in the rear suddenly lost control, its entire body lifting directly into the air. Erdan was completely petrified, his body frozen stiff. He stared at Boss Mang's right hand with sheer disbelief, as if expecting a flower to bloom from his palm. Wasn't this too damn absurd? Didn't they say this world has no flashy battle chi or magic? Only trains developed to the extreme and pure, raw power? What was that just now? Doomsday magic? Or are you the last cultivator of the apocalypse? By now, the two trains in front had sped close to the Hongxing Hao and quickly screeched to a halt. A short man and a young man jumped down from their control cabins, looking back in absolute horror. When they saw their pursuer floating helplessly in midair, both of them stood rooted to the spot, completely dumbfounded. Right then, all the cannons on the roof of the levitating train simultaneously aimed at Chun Mang and the others below, and without hesitation, opened fire. Boom, boom, boom. Hundreds of cannon shells instantly rained down on Chun Mang and the group. However, before Erdan or anyone else could even react, they heard Chun Mang say coldly, "Stubborn fools." The very next instant, all the incoming artillery shells seemed to hit an insurmountable barrier, coming to a dead stop in midair. Hundreds of shells just hovered there, completely motionless, as if someone had hit the pause button. The short man stared at the scene before him and couldn't help but slap himself across the face. When the sharp pain registered, he finally confirmed he wasn't dreaming, nor had time stopped. There was nothing wrong with the world and nothing wrong with his eyes. Those shells were literally floating in midair. Right after that, Tran Mang's right hand suddenly clenched into a fist. Those hundreds of shells instantly accelerated, reversing direction like a storm of metal to engulf the locomotive of the train spinning wildly in the air. Against the starry night sky, explosions bloomed one after another, blindingly bright. The train, now missing its locomotive, slowly plummeted to the ground right next to everyone. At the same time, the door of Hang Tin House 7th escort carriage opened. Several mechs dashed out, followed by infantry units, quickly wiping out any remaining resistance, and simultaneously taking in all the residents of that train. U2, Tran Mang, leaning on his cane, stood in the wasteland looking at the short man and the young man with a smile. Long time no see. Consider the residents of this train as a little gift from me to you both. Only then did the short man snap back to reality. He looked up at Tran Mang, mumbling for a long time before finally managing to ask, "Master Mang, what exactly was that move just now?" "Just a little trick, nothing worth mentioning." Tran Mang replied calmly, not showing a hint of arrogance. But the train chasing us was a level 6 mechanical train. A move that can instantly obliterate a level 6 mechanical train. How can you call that a little trick? Sometimes, what terrifies people the most isn't power. It's treating that power as if it's no big deal. To me, it really was just a little trick, Tran Mang said with a smile. A level 6 mechanical train, huh? Sounds so foreign. It's been ages since I even heard of that level. He was just bleeding inside. Every time he used the strong magnetic field, the cost was far from cheap. Controlling steel shrapnel was costly too, but at least it was manageable. But using the magnetic field to drag an entire level 6 train into the air was different. The price to pay was massive. That just burned through 540,000 units of iron ore, so expensive it hurt. Still, you save when you should, and you spend when you must. He had been holed up in a mine for a whole month without seeing the sun. Wasn't it exactly for moments like this? Just then, the young man standing next to the short man finally came to his senses. He stared blankly at the colossal train behind Tran Mang, each carriage 10 meters high and 30 meters long, his eyes filled with shock. Master Mang, how is your train so huge? Just a little trick. Then this must be a level 11 train, right? Level 12. So this armor must be level 12 too? Level 14. So strong. The young man looked at the Hang Tin Hao with unconcealed admiration. I wonder when he'll ever own a train like this. Once you hit level 10, you can expand the train. It's not too hard. Then expanding the train must cost a ton of iron ore, right? Not that much, just over 10 million units of iron ore. Over 10 million. The young man stood frozen, looking down and counting on his fingers. In the Sand River Plain, it's mostly level 2 ore. A level 2 mine only yields over 300,000 units. Does that mean you have to mine more than 30 of those to get enough? Thinking about it, he felt that in this lifetime, it would probably be very hard for him to own a train like that. Master Mang. The short man standing next to him spoke, his voice filled with awe. Weren't you just a level 10 train a month ago? How are you already at level 12? That upgrade speed is insane. It's all right, Tran Mang replied with a slight smile. Nidan stood nearby, watching everyone chat, remaining completely silent. At that moment, he started to suspect something, that what Master Mang just said might not be the whole truth. Repaying the favor was true, but he was definitely showing off a bit too. He didn't quite understand that move just now, but he knew one thing for sure. The energy cost for that trick was absolutely far greater than using regular cannons. Because up until now, he had never seen Master Mang use this method in official battles. But there was no denying it. Master Mang's growth speed was terrifyingly fast. Just 1 month, and he was already a level 12 train. What did this imply? Could it be Master Mang was about to enter the event map in the purple zone? Thinking of this, Nidan suddenly felt he couldn't keep up at all anymore. Master Mang's speed was so fast it brought people to despair. All right then, Tran Mang chuckled, looking at the two. Coming here this time can be considered my final meeting with you guys. I'm about to enter the next area. I'm afraid we won't have the chance to meet again after this. I promised last time that if we met again, I'd give you two a welcome gift. What do you need? Just name it. Right at that moment, Tu's urgent shout suddenly rang out from afar. Master Mang, look out. The next moment, a thug from that train broke through Tu and his team's defense line. With a pistol in hand and a vicious look on his face, he pulled the trigger, aiming right at Tran Mang. Before Nidan and the others could even react, they saw Tran Mang casually raise his right hand, tightly pinching a glowing red bullet between his fingers. Scum, Tran Mang coldly flicked the bullet aside. Immediately after, hundreds of steel shards shot out from the control cabin, turning into a dense rain of blades that instantly shredded the thug on the spot. Fresh blood dyed the ground red. Tu rushed over in a panic. Pale-faced, he dropped to his knees and said with a trembling voice, "Please forgive me, Master Mang." He had no idea what just happened. Logically speaking, it was absolutely impossible for anyone to slip through the net. They had rehearsed the entire protocol countless times. And yet, he nearly let a thug from a level 6 mechanical train hurt Master Mang. Thinking about it, he felt like his career was likely over. It's fine. Tran Mang waved his hand lightly. Get back to your post. Yes, sir. In his mind, Tran Mang secretly praised Huai, while telling her to find a plausible excuse so Tu wouldn't beat himself up over it. Under normal circumstances, There was no way that Thug could have breached the defense line, but it was a different story if QAI intentionally fed them false information. To put it bluntly, he just hadn't showed off enough. He wanted to flex one more time, but unfortunately, there were no suitable targets left, so he had to borrow one from Buta's hands. Tran Mang cleared his throat, turned to the two, and smiled. Just a minor hiccup. Hey, raise some iron ore, copper ore, and 4 pieces of ink jade. Take it as a welcome gift. 500,000 units of iron ore, 200,000 units of copper ore, and 2 ink jades each. The Doomsday Cannon can only be upgraded to level 8 max, but if it reaches level 10, you get 2 super effects that cut consumption in half. Many top-tier players take this route. From now on, we probably won't cross paths again. Sometimes, flexing isn't just about showing off. It's to let people know there's still hope in this world. An hour later, Tran Mang bid them farewell, returned to the Hang Tin Hao train, and hit the road back home once again. It was true that they probably wouldn't see each other again, but this chat was very enjoyable. Those two were excellent at providing emotional value. In other words, giving off good energy. This so-called energy field is actually deeply connected to a person's mental state. When talking to some people, you feel like you're being recharged, while with others, you just feel completely drained. In most cases, when he led the conversation, he was in a state of absorbing energy. And energy often dictates a person's aura, or in other words, their luck. The more energy a person has, the stronger their luck. It's a somewhat superstitious view, but Tran Mang believed in it. Master Mang, did you really make this trip just for this? What else would it be for? When I first saw you come to the Sand River Plain, I thought you were looking for that guy. The one you called weak. The captain of the non-Doi Hue train, the A-rank potential guy. Didn't he try and fail to recruit you into Libra, and then threaten you? Oh, him? He's dead. When? Exactly 1 hour ago. Only then did Erdan finally react, his face showing a hint of shock. Master Mang, you mean? That level 6 train just now was the non-Doi Hao? Yeah. What a coincidence. A coincidence? Chun Mang chuckled softly, looking into the void at the end of the train tunnel and shaking his head. It wasn't a coincidence at all. We're about to leave this zone. How could I possibly forget about this and leave a hidden danger behind? I've been waiting for a long time. Even while we were mining, I sent those two to track down the non-Doi Hao and lure it to a specific location within a set time frame. The older brother is dead. How could the younger brother be allowed to live? A family should stay neatly together. They can keep each other company down in hell. Inside the train tunnel, the Hang Tin Hao was hurtling forward at breakneck speed. In guard car number 7, Biaozi sat down with a dark expression, looking at Zhang Damei and the Team 3 captain, enunciating every word. I've carefully replayed the whole thing in my head, and the more I think about it, the more wrong it feels. There's no way ID let someone break through my defensive line. At the time, President AI told me there was someone on the left and pulled me away. My normal position should have been pushing forward, but President AI said the front was clear. Then Zhang Yi was also redirected to the right by President AI. There's something wrong with President AI. She did it on purpose. President AI might have betrayed us. She's trying to get Master Mang killed. I have to go tell Master Mang about this. But the Team 3 captain hesitated, glancing at the mechanical eye on the ceiling. Brother Biao, President AI can hear what we're saying. So what? Biaozi stood up straight, tilting his head to stare at the mechanical eye and the 100 heavy machine guns mounted on the ceiling. There was no fear in his eyes, only a hint of defiance. I don't believe she'd dare control the machine guns to shoot me without Master Mang's order. And even if she does actually shoot me dead, that's even better. I'm sure Master Mang will realize what exactly happened. I'm going to explain this clearly to Master Mang. If you've got the guts, shoot me dead right now. With that, Biaozi strode quickly toward car number 6. Zhang Damei and the Team 3 captain exchanged glances. Their faces looked grim, but they immediately followed him. Even though they didn't want to believe Brother Biao's theory, if President AI had truly gone rogue, it would be a fatal blow to the train. Many people would die. Furthermore, they believed in Brother Biao's strength. With Brother Biao and Team 1's capabilities, the defensive line they set up absolutely couldn't be broken by a mere thug from a level 6 mechanical train. Such a thing had never happened before. In the control room, The corner of Chun Meng's mouth twitched slightly before he turned to look at Air Dan. Go down to the first floor and hang out for a bit. I have some business to handle. Once Air Dan took the elevator down to the first floor, Xiao AI walked into the control room. Her face clearly spelled out speechless as she looked at Chun Meng and spoke bluntly. Captain, what do we do now? Biaozi and the others have made up their minds to report me, even if it kills them. They're saying I intentionally provided false information to get you killed. How should we handle this? Chun Meng glared at Xiao AI in annoyance. Wipe that mischievous look off your face right now. Couldn't you have hidden it a little better? Biaozi isn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed, yet even he figured it out in hindsight. You made it way too obvious. Captain, you're passing the buck. All right, enough. Chun Meng couldn't be bothered to argue. He just looked at the screen and sighed. They're already outside the door. Open it. Moments later, Biaozi marched into the control room. Without even sparing Xiao AI a glance, he walked straight up to Chun Meng and dropped to his knees, his voice hoarse. Master Meng, I'm not looking for excuses for myself. But Master Meng, there's a huge chance President AI has betrayed us. She deliberately fed me false info to let that thug slip through and harm you. If you don't believe me, Master Meng, I'm willing to trade my life for President Ace. Well, both die together. President AI must be dealt with as soon as possible, or it'll be endless trouble later. If she does it once, she'll do it again. Xiao AI remained expressionless, her face essentially screaming dumbass. She threw Biaozi a glance, too lazy to even say a word. Phew. Chun Meng took a deep breath, abruptly stood up, and delivered a solid kick right into Biaozi, roaring as he did so. Damn it, do my words mean nothing anymore? Loyalty can be a double-edged sword without someone holding the hilt. And here you are, kneeling stubbornly on the ground, refusing to get up. Are you playing the damn role of a loyal official dying to give me advice? I was the one who ordered Xiao AI to let a guy slip through, because I wanted to show off. I wanted to put on a grand show with a storm of swords, all right? If you guys kill everyone, what the hell am I supposed to kill? Got it. Damn it, you idiot. After his outburst, Chun Meng panted heavily, adjusted his clothes, and watched Biaozi scramble up with a dumbfounded look before letting out a frustrated sigh. Anything else? Understood. Biaozi stood there, mortified. He hurriedly picked up his clothes from the floor and awkwardly shuffled toward the door. Sorry about that, Master Meng. I didn't know. I thought. President AI, I'm sorry to you too. I was too drunk just now and talking nonsense. Chun Meng watched Biaozi's retreating back, then glanced at the lights on both sides of the train tunnel blurring rapidly in reverse. He then leaned back in his chair, kicked his feet up on the control console, and grumbled, pay more attention next time. Putting the matter out of his mind, he frowned and pulled Xiao Lu into his arms, examining it from top to bottom. The train has already reached level 12. Why hasn't Xiao Lu woken up yet? Could it be? It's not an A-rank potential, but an S-rank? There's a very high probability, Xiao AI said from the side, her voice deepening. If it's an S-rank potential star behemoth, the train needs to hit level 15 before it can awaken. An infant S-rank potential star behemoth. Chun Meng fell silent, gazing at Xiao Lu in his hands with a complicated expression. An infant A-rank star behemoth, if it matured smoothly, would become a level 120 star behemoth. What kind of concept was level 120? His Hang Tin Hao train was only level 12, yet he already felt almost invincible in the white zone, even daring to barge into the purple zone. He even had the feeling that he could soon break out of this planet and venture into the sea of stars to seek out other civilizations. But in the face of a level 120 star behemoth, he was as frail as a sheet of paper. He might not even be able to get close. Just a single turn of its body, and the shockwaves alone would crush his train. Star behemoths fed on planets. That was a power far beyond imagination. Dropping a large-yield nuclear bomb into its mouth probably wouldn't even knock off a speck of dental plaque. And that was just an A-rank potential. Xiao Lu in his hands was an S-rank potential infant star behemoth, a whole tier higher. If an A-rank potential infant could buy out all the resources on the Shui Lan Xing, then an S-rank potential was absolutely priceless. Xiao AI, I'm here. Why would an S-rank star behemoth infant appear on this planet? Unknown. But the universe is vast, so vast that events with a near-zero probability are bound to happen eventually. So, this isn't exactly surprising. I'm saying, what if? If this infant's mother finds me, will I be killed? Highly likely. My database on star behemoths is extremely limited. Most of the information comes from the chips in that old lab, so it's incomplete. Chen Meng didn't say anything else. He just reached out to play with Xiao Lu's small, slightly pouting rosy mouth. It looked quite cute. A month had passed, yet its body size hadn't changed at all. Then let's just wait until the train reaches level 15 and see what changes happen to Xiao Lu. The accessory grades are white, green, blue, purple, gold, and prismatic. Region levels are the same. You are currently in a blue zone, about to enter a purple zone. Once you reach the prismatic zone, you might truly leave this planet and enter the Star Sea to explore other civilizations. It's a long road ahead, Chun Meng sighed softly. To survive in the Star Sea, the current train is still too weak. It needs to be much stronger, and it also needs a lot more residents. Entering the Star Sea essentially means being completely isolated from the old world. Before discovering other life forms, the sense of loneliness will be absolutely terrifying. With more residents, the train would be livelier, and human civilization could naturally carry on. He always believed that while a person can easily stay rational when alone, being alone for too long will eventually lead to a mental breakdown. Before embarking on a journey across the Star Sea, he had to ensure the train had enough population to inherit the civilization and avoid falling into absolute isolation. It's like damned if you do, and even more damned if you don't. The Hengxing House speed was insanely fast. In just tens of minutes, it returned to Danger Valley, drilling straight up from underground to the surface. The entire process maintained a speed of nearly 5,040 kilometers per hour. This was the top speed without activating any hyperdrive effects. If the train wasn't carrying such a heavy load and burdened with 14 expanded, heavily armored carriages, it could have been even faster. Buzz. As gears turned, the first-floor hatch of the Hengxing House locomotive slowly opened. The travel frog blew its whistle, turning into a streak of light as it shot out of the Hengxing House and darted into the distance. This was the advantage of an expanded train. Subordinate trains could be stored directly inside, just like fighter jets on an aircraft carrier. With that, the two trains parted ways. It was late into the night. Most of the residents were already fast asleep. Chen Meng also felt exhausted and ready to rest. He glanced at the collection progress of the dream vein, let out a yawn, washed up quickly, and fell asleep. The road ahead was still very long, but at least for tonight, he could sleep peacefully. Humans have one major flaw: the need to sleep. From a certain perspective, it means nearly a third of a human's lifespan is spent in a hazy, unconscious state. In that half-awake, half-asleep state, he dreamed again. This time, it seemed to be a lucid dream. The night was deep. All the residents were sound asleep in their dormitories. Except in Residential Area 1, under a pavilion, where a young male student sat hugging a laptop, his eyes completely bloodshot. His hands flew across the keyboard at a speed so fast, it looked like a descending angel toying with mortals. Everyone else was asleep. He was the only one awake. He hadn't finished his 20,000 words for today. This was the task assigned to him by Zhang Xiaochong. He was responsible for writing novels to enrich the spiritual entertainment of the train's residents. He didn't have to mine ores. He only needed to write 20,000 words a day. It sounded simple enough, but still awake? Right at that moment, Lao Zhu walked over with a hearty laugh. He sat down in the pavilion, taking a moment to admire the surrounding scenery. The Hengxing House had a total of 8 residential areas, each personally designed and built by Master Meng. Perhaps because Residential Area 1 was the first to be built, Master Meng had put special care into it. It had lawns, rockeries, a babbling brook, and even a sheltered corridor to keep out the wind and rain. Who knew what Master Meng was thinking? To actually make it rain inside a spatial portal. Coupled with the spatial portal's panoramic visual effects, you only had to look up to see the moon. The white clouds were dyed black by the night, and in the distance, tree shadows swayed gently in the evening breeze. Even the high-end residential complexes before the apocalypse couldn't boast this kind of environment and greenery. He really liked this residential area and often took a stroll here, which always put him in a better mood. Then, Lao Zhu turned to look at the young student beside him and smiled. How's life on the train treating you? You only have to type 20,000 words a day and don't need to do anything else. It's much easier than before, right? The young student, with his bloodshot eyes, turned his head. His voice was hoarse and trembling. Old Zhang Shachong, is our train still short on slaves? I'd like to apply to be a slave. Lao Zhu's expression instantly darkened. He frowned. What kind of nonsense are you spouting? You think being a slave is more comfortable? The young student didn't answer. His eyes were just filled with utter despair, and his voice carried a faint sob. Old Zhang Shachong, when slaves don't have oars to mine, they at least get to rest. I am resident number 1999. Am considered a veteran resident by now. In the 2 months since I boarded this train, I haven't had a single proper day of rest. Right now, I feel like I've gotten word poisoning. Lao Zhu rubbed his nose, thinking for a moment. It did seem a bit too harsh. But he quickly stood up, patting the student on the shoulder with a profound tone. This is the apocalypse. When you face difficulties, you have to overcome them. Taking a vacation is impossible. Keep writing. If others can do it, why can't you? Others? Like who? Someone, in some corner of the world. Lao Zhu didn't say anything more and turned to leave. He was planning to go to the Red House to relax. He was just dropping by on the way. One was the vice captain, the other just a resident. Neither of them had the captain's authority. If Chen Mang had been standing there, he would have clearly seen that every time the boy typed a word, a very faint ripple would appear in the surrounding air. Those ripples connected into a straight line, piercing through the spatial portal, running along the carriages straight to the control cabin, and diving into the civilization token in the drawer. It looks like it's about to succeed. Uncle Lee, with bloodshot eyes and surrounded by empty Coke cans at his feet, trembled as he stared at the swollen-bellied zombie in front of him. His expression was frantically excited. It was finally going to succeed. His very first infant zombie was finally about to be born. Although the efficiency was agonizingly slow, this was a perfect start. At the very least, it proved that this theory was completely viable. The next step was just to scale it up. This swollen-bellied zombie was one of the hundreds captured from that laboratory. They had swallowed a massive amount of iron ore, making the nuclear energy in their bodies unusually abundant. That was probably why the fetus was able to develop. As for the young student, he had already dazedly leaned against the wall and fallen asleep. In the entire carriage, Uncle Lee was the only living person left, along with Shun Jia, who was half dead. Tied to a bronze pillar, Shun Jia wore a look of utter despair, his hollow eyes staring straight ahead. He had been tortured for over a month. Right now, there was only one thought left in his mind. If only he had died decisively from the very beginning. Then he wouldn't have had to endure this level of torment. He truly wanted to die. Morning came. Nothing happened last night. It was a rare, peaceful night. Chen Mang stretched his arms, hopped out of bed feeling refreshed, washed up quickly, lit a cigarette, and sat down in his chair to check the train's log. This had become his routine every time he woke up. By the time he finished reading the log, he would have just finished his cigarette, and his mind would be completely awake. Nothing major happened. Just a few stray monsters approaching, all cleanly dealt with by Biaozi and the external patrol team. After finishing the train's log, he let out a puff of faint smoke. There were gears turning silently. It was just that no one had noticed them yet. He snuffed out his cigarette, but in a Coke, while picking up the bowl of millet porridge Xiao Fong had placed on the table, taking slow sips. Next to it was a plate of pig ears and red chili sauce. He wasn't sure where this chili sauce came from, as he didn't recall the train having this kind of supply. After taking a few bites, he opened the train's control panel and checked his resource balance. 26.38 million units of iron ore, 2.57 million units of wood, 17.64 million units of copper ore, 2.32 million units of crimson core rock, and 10.29 million units of titanium crystal ore. His resources were still sufficient. At least for the short term, there was nothing to worry about. The next 2 days were scheduled as downtime. The residents got 2 days off, and so did he. He would take this time to tally up and organize all the loot they had gathered recently. What needed to be inventoried was inventoried. What needed to be stored was stored. Everything was gradually falling into order. He glanced at the Dreamstone's progress. It had already reached 80%, increasing by 2% overnight. This speed actually took him by surprise. Then, his eyes landed on the reminder calendar on the train's control screen, and his expression gradually darkened. The spirit graveyard had refreshed. He could use the civilization token to enter that area and mine iron ore again. It was just a matter of whether he should go or not. That still required some thought. That area mostly consisted of level 2 ores, and level 3 ores were extremely rare. Even mining nonstop for 48 hours wouldn't yield much. He thought to himself that he should first see if he could find other mineral veins. If there really weren't any better options, it wouldn't be too late to head to the spirit graveyard then. Worth noting was that, through the resource exploration radar, he could see the refresh times of all the depleted mineral veins. However, the mineral vein inside the cavern at the end of the train tunnel didn't display a refresh time. Or rather, it had no refresh time at all. In other words, that mineral vein wasn't naturally formed in the first place. At this thought, he couldn't help but feel suspicious. If it were a natural vein, it couldn't possibly be that dense. And that boss monster, standing over 10 meters tall, it's very likely the source of all those minerals. After all, there are absolutely no signs of excretion around here. Its food source was probably these things, too. Eating and excreting at the same time. That's how it managed to survive being trapped underground for who knows how long. Of course, this was just his personal speculation. There was no way to verify if it was right or wrong. But it didn't really matter. At least it wouldn't affect his current decisions. He opened the drawer, took out the civilization token, and planned to visit the spirit graveyard in a few days. But just then, he suddenly realized that the civilization token in his hand had undergone a change. Faint, shimmering streams of light had started swirling around the surface of the token at some point. What is this? Chen Meng frowned slightly and quickly opened the civilization token's info panel. Special item, civilization token. Special effect. This token can help rebuild a civilization. Use with caution. It should only be activated when the train reaches at least level 20. Whether rebuilding your own civilization or someone else's, it will put you back on the dining table, attracting countless greedy eyes. In the universe, there are only two kinds, hunters and prey. Activating this token grants access to the spirit graveyard, a highly gloomy dimension containing massive amounts of mineral resources. You can stay for 48 hours per entry, and entry is limited to once a month. Compared to before, the description hasn't changed at all. However, on the back of the civilization token, a pentagram made of glowing white lines had appeared. Each point of the star had a different word: humanities, culture, military, agriculture, and system. The civilization token had never shown such changes before. When he focused his mind on a word, the corresponding branches would unfold. Chen Meng froze for a moment, instinctively focusing his mind on humanities. Instantly, a control panel appeared before his eyes. Humanities progress, 62%. Then, a series of images began to flash sequentially. The residents holding the first apocalyptic wedding on the Hongxing Hao, the exhausted residents mining ore. The girls in the red house laughing with guests, a sweaty resident resting in the residential area, lighting a cigarette with a relaxed face. And scenes of people gathering for a feast, children listening attentively to a lecture in a classroom. When he shifted his focus to culture, another panel appeared. Culture progress, 77%. Images of residents communicating, Lao Zhu and Biaozi using hand signals. Everyone watching the movie filmed by Zhang Yiren. A young guy hugging a computer and typing frantically in the pavilion. Lao Zhu recording history in his room. A little girl standing on stage singing for the residents. Military progress, 78%. Upgrading the train and its armor, the train destroying monsters and zombies. Biaozi leading people out for a night hunt. The captain of Team 3 conducting combat training in the virtual space. Zhang Yi and Zhang Air piloting mechs, missiles screeching as they launched into the sky. Agriculture progress, 37%. The food production line running continuously, Uncle Li raising livestock and farming in livestock car number 15. System progress, 87%. Images of him giving a speech on the train's roof, ordering Lao Zhu's appointment as vice captain, promoting the Hongxing vouchers, Xiao AI implanting iris chips for every resident. And the moment he enacted the 10 great laws of the Hongxing Hao. Watching those images, Chen Meng remained silent for a long time. It was only now that he realized what he was building had long surpassed a mere train. Perhaps this was just the beginning. After a long while, Chen Meng withdrew his gaze from the civilization token in front of him, leaned back in his chair, and lit a cigarette, his expression complex and silent. He still didn't completely understand what this thing truly meant, but if his judgment wasn't wrong, it was very likely a prerequisite quest line meant for rebuilding civilization. When all 5 of these categories reached 100% progress, a basic civilization would essentially be rebuilt. Although still crude and lacking many things, at least there was a clear framework. Looking at it from this perspective, human civilization must have truly gone extinct. If he were to activate the civilization token right now, he could instantly rebuild human civilization. It was just that the panel had repeatedly warned him against doing it too soon, lest he be placed on the dining table. The safest time would be to wait at least until the train reached level 20. Thus, the meaning behind the 5 progress bars on the back of the civilization token was completely clear. Only when all 5 categories hit 100% and the civilization token was activated, could a civilization be officially rebuilt. If the progress wasn't complete, activating the civilization token still wouldn't be enough to rebuild human civilization. Rebuild human civilization. Chen Meng furrowed his brows. Doing this would basically mean that the entire responsibility and pressure of human civilization would be dumped onto the Hongxing Hao. The Hongxing Hao would represent the orthodoxy of human civilization. Thinking of this, even he felt a heavy weight on his shoulders. Phew. After a long time, he slowly exhaled and stubbed out his cigarette in the ashtray. The pressure was definitely immense, but if no one else was going to step up, he wouldn't mind trying to shoulder some of it. Besides, it seemed only the Hongxing Hao was capable of completing these 5 categories anyway. Honestly, he hadn't thought about this aspect at all from the start, nor had anyone guided him. For example, the apocalyptic wedding was initially just to earn inheritance value, and throwing a feast was to let the residents relax. Filming, writing novels, and singing were just very natural activities. But surprisingly, those actions had inadvertently touched upon the 3 most basic forms of artistic expression: cinema, literature, and music. Thinking about it carefully, the conditions required to achieve these things were actually incredibly harsh. Other trains would find it nearly impossible to replicate. The apocalyptic wedding was probably the easiest among them. It just required apocalyptic marriage certificates. As long as there were residents on board in love, holding a ceremony could yield both inheritance value and humanity's progress. But the remaining conditions were far more difficult. Like filming, for instance, it required a complete film crew. With the apocalypse dragging on this long, finding a film crew was no easy feat. Even with an amateur director, where would they get the filming equipment? Where would the projection screen come from? Not every train car had mechanical eyes and custom-made screens. And even if they somehow had all of those things, not knowing that filming could boost civilization progress, how many trains would be willing to do such a thankless, effort-wasting task? It was the apocalypse. A train could be destroyed at any moment, diverting precious manpower to film movies. Frankly speaking, in the eyes of others, it was nothing more than asking for trouble. Literature and music were even more a result of lucky coincidences. Even he didn't know where Lao Zhu found a slave to write novels, grinding out 20,000 words a day like clockwork, silently boosting his humanity's progress. And the most important thing, the civilization token itself, was extremely hard to obtain. He had to complete an S-rank difficulty quest in the encounter map to get it, and to this day, he hadn't seen any other way to acquire one. And when doing all of this, there were absolutely no instructions or hints. In other words, when doing these things, he had no idea they could increase the progress of the civilization token. With each harsh condition piling up, Chen Meng finally realized. Perhaps he was the only one capable of rebuilding human civilization, as it would be exceedingly difficult for other trains to meet the requirements. The 5 basic progress bars were already almost full. By the time his train leveled up to 20, maybe everything would be nearly complete. However, it still wasn't settled. It would be best to wait until the Hongxing Hao became the strongest train on this planet before making the next move. Most importantly, he still wasn't sure what exact benefits rebuilding civilization would bring. If there were no practical benefits, there was absolutely no need to rush this. Lao Zhu. Chen Meng picked up the walkie-talkie and said in a deep voice, "We still have 3 apocalyptic marriage certificates on the train. Ask around these next few days and see if anyone wants to get married. The train can host the wedding for them." Understood, Lao Zhu's hoarse voice quickly replied over the comms. "One more thing. Go ahead, Boss Meng. Keep a close eye on Zhang Yiren's filming and that young kid writing novels. Make sure they pump out their content faster. By the way, that little girl who was singing on stage last time, what is she doing on the train right now?" "You mean the girl who sang the otaku song? She's currently in the medical bay, in charge of providing emergency treatment for residents injured during the mining operations. Reassign her. From now on, she doesn't need to do anything else. Her only job is to sing for the residents every day. She'll sing for as long as they mine. If she ruins her voice, we'll heal her in the medical pod." Having settled everything, Tran Meng stretched his body and let out a sigh of relief. After a moment of thought, he spoke up, "Call Lai Thoi Ko, Bu Tu, Truong Not, Truong Ni, all members of Team 1, and you too. Everyone, come to the control room. We're getting ready to head to Neon City. Remember to bring whatever you need." "Yes, Captain," Q Ace voice echoed in the control room. The time was right for another trip to Neon City, utilizing Q Ace network hacking abilities to revisit the area that blocked them last time. Neon City can be accessed for 48 hours, and the Spirit Graveyard is also 48 hours. It works out perfectly to do both at the same time. The Hang Tin Hao would enter the Spirit Graveyard to mine resources, while Tran Meng led Bu Tu and the others to scout out Neon City. In security car number 7, Lao Chu stood by the window, gazing outside with a thoughtful look. Boss Meng's special instructions regarding the cameraman and the novelist made him feel that things weren't so simple. It seemed these activities were not just for entertainment, but also brought massive benefits to the Level 12 train. Could there already be this kind of evaluation standard? Did the residents have to reach a certain level of happiness to continue upgrading? He didn't dare speculate any further. Just then, Lao Chu saw Bu Tu and the others stand up and head toward the front cars. He instinctively asked, "Bu Tu, where are you going? Did Boss Meng call you guys?" "Yeah." Bu Tu helplessly shrugged, throwing his hands up with a sigh. "Boss Meng wants to take us to Neon City." Sigh, being a trusted aide has its downsides. Whenever Boss Meng goes out, he drags me along. He glanced at Lao Chu with a hint of smugness in his voice. "Unlike you, who gets to stay here and rest. I'm really jealous." After saying that, he added, "Boss Meng didn't call you?" Lao Chu's expression soured slightly. Boss Meng indeed hadn't called him, but Bu Tu's smug look was really irritating. Realizing the tension, Bu Tu quickly coughed and turned serious. "Manager Chu, it's mostly because your role on the train is too important. With Boss Meng away, all these people rely on you to manage them. If you leave, won't the train fall into chaos?" Hearing this, Lao Chu's face softened a bit, and he nodded in agreement. "That's true. You're completely clueless about this management stuff. I couldn't possibly leave and have you stay behind. Go on, don't keep Boss Meng waiting." "All right." Bu Tu grinned and led the Team 1 members toward car number 6. Passing by the Team 3 captain, he patted the guy's shoulder with a sympathetic look. "Don't be jealous. Your most urgent task right now is just getting Boss Meng to remember your name first. Hack Dao, you poor kid. Train harder these days. You're getting weaker and weaker." In the Hang Tin House control room, everyone was now fully assembled. Tran Meng didn't say much. He directly activated the civilization token. A massive teleportation portal quickly appeared in front of him, large enough for the Hang Tin Hao to enter. Only then did he understand why this portal was designed to be so enormous. The Hang Tin Hao slowly started up, and just as it was about to enter the portal, Tran Meng crushed the Neon City free entry pass in his hand. He had only bought 3 of these passes. The shop had no limit, but he had only taken exactly 3 at the time. Inside the control room, a miniature teleportation portal instantly materialized. Tran Meng led Bu Tu and the others inside, and their figures quickly vanished from the spot. Right after, the Hang Tin Hao successfully entered the Spirit Graveyard, beginning its 48-hour mining expedition. During Tran Meng's absence, The train would be co-managed by the train's AI assistant and Lao Chu. Moreover, the spirit graveyard inherently lacked any major dangers, so there was no need to worry about accidents. Inside Neon City, Tranmang once again appeared in the familiar square. Unlike last time when there were train captains all around, this time it was only him, Bu Tu, and their group. Truong not placed the refrigerator on the ground, and Tu AI pushed open the fridge door and stepped out. The mechanical eyes in her sockets emitted a faint light. Her head spun a full 360 degrees on her neck before she spoke. Is this Neon City? Yeah, Tranmang nodded. He then looked at Tu AI, frowning slightly. You're here right now, but there's also a you on the train. Does that count as multiple personalities? Are there going to be any bugs? Multiple personalities? Tu AI shook her head. Humans and AI are not the same. The one on the train and the one standing here are both me. It's just that our data isn't linked. The me on the train doesn't know what I'm doing here, and the me here doesn't know what the me on the train is doing. Once we return, the data will sync, and everything will align perfectly. It won't cause any issues. Tranmang nodded, got onto an off-road motorcycle nearby, glanced at the map Head bought last time, and then drove down the street toward the other end. Follow me. Half an hour later, Tranmang slowly stopped his bike in front of a factory. Surrounding the factory were walls dozens of meters high, topped with electrified fences and lined with heavy machine guns and anti-aircraft artillery. Next to the main gate was an iris lock. This was where he had been stopped last time, unable to enter. This time, he purposefully brought Tu AI along. Get to it. Tranmang leaned to the side, making room for Tu AI. This city is connected by a network. See if you can hack in. You're a level 100 AI, after all. Don't disappoint me. Boss Mang is piling on the pressure again, Tu AI replied, then stepped forward with a serious demeanor. She stood before the iris lock and observed it for a moment. Her skull suddenly popped open, and two white wires, thin as spiderwebs, extended out and slipped into the gaps of the combination lock. At the same time, one of her fingers split open to reveal a plug, which she shoved directly into the bottom panel of the iris lock after opening it. On Tue's back, a screen simultaneously lit up. The screen shifted to a black background, and endless strings of green code furiously cascaded down. Standing behind her, Bu Tu stared at the sight and couldn't help but mutter in awe. So professional. Indeed. Tranmang nodded in agreement. She lives up to being a level 100 train AI assistant. Her abilities are no joke. Just then, Lithoi Ko, standing nearby, hesitantly raised his hand and said in a low voice, well, my eyes catch images a bit faster than normal, and those strings of green code streaming down like crazy, they all just say hello world. He paused for a beat and continued, before the apocalypse, I was a game designer, so I understand a bit of code. Code used to hack a network connection on an iris lock. Couldn't possibly just be a bunch of hello worlds, right? In the very next moment, a metallic click rang out. On the iris lock, 3 green indicator lights lit up consecutively like a slot machine. Then, the factory gates that had blocked them last time simply slid open. The massive metal doors slowly parted to the sides. Before everyone's eyes lay the most core sector of this city, which was also the most heavily fortified. Everything hidden inside was like a young maiden gently lifting the hem of her skirt, instantly capturing every gaze. Having completed the operation, Tu AI expressionlessly turned her head to look at Lithoi Company. The strings of code frantically scrolling on the screen behind her back moments ago obviously had absolutely nothing to do with hacking the iris lock. What she actually did was infiltrate the network, find every iris code capable of opening this door within the database, and then use the miniature projector in her mechanical eye to recreate it at a 1-to-1 scale. The entire process was extremely complex, but as an employee, it didn't matter how complicated the task was. The important thing was to let the boss see just how difficult the work was and how smoothly it had been executed. Only then did it mean anything. The screen on her back just now was simply put on a show for Tranmang. It served no other purpose. After all, the difficulty of the job had to be visually demonstrated. Otherwise, Tranmang wouldn't realize just how impressive she was. It was just a pity that her little trick was exposed by someone who knew too much about coding. Very good. Tranmang didn't say much. He merely nodded in satisfaction. He then glanced at the heavy machine guns and anti-aircraft artillery on the walls surrounding the factory. So if we go in, these things won't shoot at us, right? They won't. QAI shook her head and began to explain, this city operates on an intranet. The original firewall should have been incredibly stable. With my processing power, it would be nearly impossible to find a vulnerability. And even if I did find one, the opposition would immediately detect it and launch a defensive counterattack. But it seems this place has been abandoned for a very long time. Without maintenance, numerous loopholes have appeared, so it took little effort to break in. This factory is the city's core hub. The network core for the entire city is also located inside this factory. Right now, I've only infiltrated the factory's external network. But there's another intranet inside, and that intranet isn't connected to the iris lock. Its location should be in room 1008 on the first floor. Just hack in and take control of the network core in room 1008. Captain, you'll have absolute control over this city, including the power to make the rules and change them as you see fit. Chen Meng burst into laughter, laughing heartily. His initial expectation was just to have Xiao AI unlock the areas they couldn't access last time. He didn't expect to go this far beyond his plans and gain absolute control over the entire city. Let's go? The heavily guarded square was surrounded by high walls, but the interior was quite simple, with only a 3-story building in the center. Inside room 1008, everyone stood around, watching Xiao AI at work. Right now, she stood in front of a massive server, extending several colorful data cables from her body and plugging them straight into the mainframe. The screens behind her flashed with endless lines of scrambled code. It's not hello world this time, Li Shiji muttered in a low voice. This time it's scrambled code. This process took much longer, lasting nearly 3 whole hours. Finally, Xiao AI stopped and retracted all the cables back into her body. The display on her face flashed the word proud. Then, she turned to Chen Meng, a hint of arrogance in her voice. Captain, mission accomplished. This city is now completely in your hands. The city's server contains a level 5 AI smart chip that acts as the main controller. But I've already taken care of it. Now the control over the entire city is in my hands, which means it's in yours. Excellent. Chen Meng nodded in satisfaction, then asked with a hint of curiosity, how exactly do battles between you AIs work? Well, Xiao AI explained seriously, killing an AI is actually quite simple. You just have to destroy its physical host. For instance, if someone smashes the AI assistant core of my train, ID die. Or if I get formatted and my entire database is wiped clean, that's basically death too. But the database of this level 5 AI chip holds a lot of crucial information. Formatting it directly wasn't ideal, and I couldn't locate its physical host anyway. So, I crammed its database with a massive amount of junk data that requires priority processing. Since that chip is currently in unactivated hibernation. With so much junk data stuffed into it, normally it would just sleep forever if no one wakes it up. And if it does get woken up, ITLL have to spend a very long time processing all that garbage. If its computing power isn't enough, it might even crash completely. That time frame is more than enough for me to handle everything. You can roughly understand it like this. If there were hundreds of millions of residents on the train, and every single one of them made a purchase at the resident store at the exact same time, my main processor would definitely start blowing black smoke. Xiao AI shrugged as she spoke, her tone completely nonchalant. Then, can we modify a few basic rules? For example, Chen Meng raised his wrist and tapped his watch, adding a few zeros to the end of my 5,000 balance. He roughly understood the principle, but that didn't matter. What he wanted to know was what he could actually do right now. This 5,000-point balance was still the leftover money from his previous trip to Neon City. Of course we can, my captain. Xiao AI grinned and snapped her fingers. How about changing it to 50,000? No, that's too little. 500,000. Still not enough. Let's go with 5 million, or maybe 50 million. Or better yet, 5 billion. I guess 5 billion should just about do it. Chen Meng stared blankly at his wristwatch. The numbers on it skyrocketed like crazy, finally stopping at 500 million. At this moment, he suddenly felt a strong sense of familiarity. It felt exactly like typing in a cheat code while playing GTA. Oh. Behind him, Biaozi and the others saw that string of numbers and froze on the spot. They still remembered just how hard it was to make money during their first visit to Neon City. They had barely managed to scrape together 100,000 or so at the casino, and ultimately had to rely on Zhang Yi fighting in underground boxing matches just to earn $1 million. That $1 million was already enough to buy a ton of stuff from the mechanical train accessory store. And now? $5 billion right off the bat. Damn it, this was straight up hacking. If this were a game before the apocalypse, his account would have been banned without hesitation. Is this money actually usable? Chen Meng looked at Xiao AI with a slightly subtle expression. Or is it just for show? Can I really go to other stores and spend it? Of course it's usable. Xiao AI tilted her head up, her face full of pride. This city's currency system belongs to the mechanical civilization. Not only does it work here, but you can also use it normally even if you go to other cities within the mechanical civilization. Furthermore, because this city has been abandoned for so long, its firewall was completely breached. That means there's no verification required when spending, allowing you to use it freely. If you were to leave Neon City and go to other mechanical civilization cities, every transaction would have to go through multiple layers of verification, making it very easy to get caught. Being able to use it here is more than enough. Chen Meng laughed, turning around and walking straight out. 5 billion isn't enough. Bump it up to 500 billion. For the next 48 hours, there's only one mission. Spend every last dime of this 500 billion. Next, he had only one target. The mechanical train accessory store. This store didn't just have a first floor, it had a second floor as well. Last time, they didn't let him go up to the second floor, claiming that only captains with level 10 trains or higher were allowed entry. His train was now level 12, so he was naturally qualified. No matter what was on the second floor, he only had one thing to say. He'll take it all. Money is no object. This time, money truly was no object. The mechanical train accessory store, a familiar place. Chen Meng pushed the door open and walked in. The girl standing by the door smiled and said in a clear voice, "Welcome, sir. You are free to browse and select items on the first and second floors. The third floor area is exclusively open to captains with level 20 trains or higher. Your current level does not yet meet the requirements." Chen Meng swept his gaze around. It looked no different from when he had left last time. It seemed that no one had set foot in this city since then. He had pretty much bought all the good stuff on the first floor last time. What remained were mostly ordinary items. For instance, manhwa stones were 100,000 points each, with a purchase limit of 18. He didn't buy them last time, feeling they weren't of much use, and the other items weren't anything special either. But who cares? Pack up everything on the first floor. Chen Meng leaned on his cane and walked straight up to the second floor. Don't talk to me about money. They'll pay you 10 times the price. Move it. Money is no object. 10 times the price, got that? Pack yourself up while you're at it. Following right behind, Biaozi looked thrilled as he laughed and shouted loudly, before hurriedly chasing after Chen Meng up to the second floor. He absolutely loved this feeling of throwing his weight and wealth around. Now he understood why so many gamers love turning on hacks. Who could resist this kind of feeling? The layout of the second floor was similar to the first, still glass cabinets and display screens. The screens displayed various items one by one. manhwa stone, special item, price, 100,000 points, stock, 14 units. Rare train token, special item, price, 500,000 points, stock, 1 unit. Random white tier blueprint, price, 15,000 points, stock, 12 units. Random green tier blueprint, price, 50,000 points, stock, 8 units. Time rift detector, red tier vehicle accessory, price, 10 million points, stock, 1 unit. Extreme challenge, special item, rare edition map chip, requires level 5 virtual combat training space to use, price, 500,000 points, stock, 2 units. And a bunch of other miscellaneous items. Chen Meng merely glanced over them before turning to the salesperson at the second floor entrance. He grinned widely. Pack up everything on the second floor. 10 times the price. Money is no object. Hurry it up. After saying that, he strode toward the third floor. But he bumped into an invisible wall of air. The salesperson packing items nearby immediately reminded him, "Sir, you cannot go up to the third floor. Only captains with a mechanical train exceeding level 20 are allowed entry. Chen Meng didn't say a word, just quietly turned his head to look at Xiao AI. Please wait a moment. Xiao AI stood there, pausing for exactly 3 seconds before speaking up. Done. The next moment, the salesperson's expression changed instantly. She bowed deeply in a highly respectful apology. Esteemed guest, I sincerely apologize. The system data hadn't updated in time earlier, but the update is now complete. It turns out your mechanical train is level 1024. You may proceed to the 3rd floor. Chen Meng reached out and touched the air in front of him. The invisible wall had completely disappeared. He merely turned his head to shoot Xiao AI a look. A level 1024 train? Isn't that a bit too exaggerated? Mostly because it's a lucky number. Fair enough. The mechanical train accessory shop only had 3 floors, and the 3rd floor was the highest. Up here, the amount of goods on display was significantly less. There were only 3 items left in stock. Everything else was sold out. But the prices for these 3 items were absolutely outrageous. Among them was even a gold-tier accessory blueprint. A gold-tier accessory, a whole tier higher than red tier. Chen Meng made a rough estimate. The total price had to be around 80 million. Phew. He let out a long breath. That was seriously expensive. If you didn't have a cheat for this, who could even afford it? With that in mind, he immediately waved his hand and looked at the 3rd floor clerk. Pack it all up. I'm taking everything, at 10 times the price. Not long after, Chen Meng's group left the mechanical shop, riding their dirt bikes and speeding down the street. On the way, whenever they came across a convenience store, they'd stop, push the door open, and say just one thing. Pack it all up. I'm taking it all, at 10 times the price. Then, payment. He'd place his smartwatch on the counter, and the money would be deducted with a beep. The clerks were very honest, too. He said 10 times the price, and they deducted exactly 10 times the amount. And on Xiao's end, the moment the money was deducted, she would instantly replenish his balance. That's why they say making money is just a scam. As long as you can directly set the rules, this speed of earning is truly unmatched. Zhang Yi and Zhang Er were overjoyed. This time, it was absolutely exhilarating. Good thing they brought enough refrigerators. Otherwise, there was no way they could hold all this stuff. Item after item was stuffed into the refrigerators, making the two of them so excited they couldn't wipe the grins off their faces. Biaozi was just as thrilled. He was extremely looking forward to the trip back. Just earlier on the 3rd floor of the mechanical shop, he had spotted an Ultimate Edition map chip priced at 20 million. This thing could definitely give a massive boost to overall physical stats. Once they got back, as long as he cleared this map, he'd be able to pilot the Pope mech. Xiao AI was also very excited. She had clearly made a huge contribution this time, and her mind was already picturing the train captain praising her once they returned. Chen Meng, of course, went without saying. This was a huge opportunity. It could elevate the train's overall foundation from every aspect. Whether the stuff was actually useful or not, as long as money could buy it, they packed it all up and took it away. The store clerks were extremely thrilled, too. This was a rare, massive windfall. Things that hadn't sold in thousands of years were completely cleared out today in one sweep. They had truly met a big spender. You could say it was a win-win for everyone involved. There were no losers. The only loser was probably the original owner of Neon City, but that guy died somewhere a long time ago. The dead don't care about winning or losing, so this time, everyone was a winner. 10 minutes later, Chen Meng arrived at a store he hadn't stepped into before. The Flesh Train accessory shop. As soon as he pushed the door open, the clerk at the entrance spoke in a crisp voice. "Excuse me, sir, this is the Flesh Train accessory shop. Respected captain of the level 1024 Flesh Train, welcome." "Thanks." Chen Meng smiled faintly, swept his gaze over the 1st floor shelves, and waved his hand. "1st floor, pack it all up. 10 times the price. Up to the 2nd floor, pack it all up. 10 times the price. Up to the 3rd floor, pack it all up. 10 times the price." Crisp and decisive. In just a few minutes, he had left the store. Behind him, Zhang Yi and Zhang Er carried the refrigerators, stuffed to the brim with their loot. Moving on, sweeping through without stopping. He had no intention of visiting the memory bank. Even though it had mech piloting experience and close combat skills, memory implantation had a pretty high mental strength requirement. Right now, only Li Shurji barely met the criteria. More importantly, implantation was harmful to the body. If it could be avoided, it should be. Chen Meng rode his dirt bike around the streets for a lap. Only when he felt he still hadn't had enough did he turn around and head toward the Sun City Entertainment District. In this city, the only places where he could spend huge amounts of money were the accessory shops and convenience stores. The other shops were basically service-oriented, and he didn't need any of that stuff at all. Half an hour later, Chen Meng strode into a casino and sat down at a table. Without even looking, he directly placed the 5 billion in chips he had just exchanged onto the number 8, looked up at the dealer, and smiled. Start the game. This was a very simple gambling table. Roulette. There were 38 numbers in total. If you hit a single number, the payout ratio was 1 to 38. Meaning, if you bet 1 billion in chips, you could get back 38 billion. However, normally, when you cashed out your chips, you could only take 35 billion. The rest was the house's cut.